Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Lake Forest City Council meeting, December 1st, 2015. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting. With that, show roll call that all are present, and we'll open it up with public session with an invocation by Bishop Tony Smith from the Church of Latter-day Saints, Lake Forest Ward.
Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee this evening grateful at this time of Thanksgiving for the wonderful community in which we live, for the many blessings that we enjoy. And we're grateful for the City Council members and the energy which they put forth to guide this city. And we ask Thee to please bless them at this time, that they will be able to make wise and inspired decisions as they seek to serve those around. We also ask Thee to please bless all in this community, that we will feel an added measure of love, that we will be concerned with the individual needs of those around us, that we can be attentive and reach out and help and serve one another, sowing more joy and happiness here in the community. We're very grateful for these wonderful facilities in which we have to meet tonight. And we ask Thy blessing upon all of us here in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Bishop Smith. With that, Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Scott Voigt. So thank you for coming in. And I'd like to have you all stand and salute the greatest symbol of freedom in the world, our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll take a motion for presentations.
I'll move the presentations.
I'll second. Cast your votes.
That motion passes unanimously. Agenda Item 1, Introduction of New Employee, Catherine Morrison, Administrative Specialist, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'd like to introduce Catherine. Wants to come up? Catherine Morrison, our new administrative specialist. Catherine comes from us most recently from the County of Orange, where she worked at Environmental Health. But Catherine's a proud a graduate of El Toro High School and grew up in the city. And that's right. And is actually also a 9-year veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces. And so she's our new administrative specialist. If you call Public Works, you'll most likely get a hold of her, and she will take great care of you. And so, Catherine, if you want to say hi or anything.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm very honored to serve our wonderful city, and thank you for having me a part of the team.
Thank you so much. Welcome back to Lake Forest.
Yeah.
We're so very proud of all of our Lake Forest or El Toro graduates, and so welcome back. We're thankful to have you on our city staff. So thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
With that, it brings us to the El Toro Student Liaison.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kaya McCullough here, reporting with you live all the fun things we have going on at El Toro. First and foremost, I'd like to give a big congratulations to everyone who participated in El Toro's annual canned food drive, because we did it. Together, El Toro and the community raised a grand total of 105,000 cans and 156 canned food items to donate to South County Outreach and Adopt a Neighbor this holiday season. With the support of everyone and a whole lot of teamwork, we crushed our goal of 100,000 cans. Not only did we break the previous school record of 86,394, but we also helped thousands of people in Orange County struggling with hunger. Now that is something I'm thankful for. To celebrate this momentous occasion, El Toro's ASB has ordered the first ever school-wide t-shirt to be given free to every student and staff member. A school-wide picture will be taken within the next couple of weeks to celebrate the success of this year's canned food drive, and I cannot wait to see the final product. Continuing on the theme of success, On November 21st and 22nd, ET's own Royal Blue Regiment competed in the Western Band of America Championships and placed 11th out of all schools in the western half of the United States. I'd like to give a huge congratulations to their first-year director, Mr. Miller, and the entire band for their remarkable accomplishment. Preparations are in full swing for our Star Wars-themed pep rally, The Holidays Awaken, which takes place on December 11th. The anticipation towards this rally is palpable across campus, and I'm so excited to share with you how it turns out. Attention all sports lovers. Seasons for boys and girls soccer and basketball, as well as wrestling and girls water polo, are beginning very shortly. In fact, tonight marks the start of the highly anticipated season for boys soccer as they face Marina High School. I can't wait to report to you all the action-packed information about our talented teams this winter season. That's all for tonight. Have a great rest of the evening, and as always, go Chargers.
I want to make a statement. Last year in their canned food drive, I think the total was 80,000. And the target was 80,000, and they went above and received 86,000 in. And this year, the ASB student government chose 100,000, and many on staff even thought, "Oh my gosh, how are we going to ever get that?" So, I want to congratulate El Toro students and the community of Lake Forest for their participation in this food drive. And El Toro students never amaze us because you guys are overachievers. Thank you guys. Happy holidays, and God bless you thank you for making a difference in our community and those around us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to public comments, and at this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes per public comment portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether it appears on the agenda or not, is requested to complete a blue request to speak form available at the side over at the door. The completed form shall be submitted to our city clerk and before the individual will be heard by City Council. When you are called to speak, there will be 3 lights, the first being green. Then there will be a 30-second left yellow light. And then when the timer buzzes, the light will turn red and your time will expire. At that time, the public portion of the comment is over. The council requests that you save any further comments for a future meeting. And Madam Clerk, before we call out any, I'd like to take a portion of my City Council comment from the end and bring it to the front, because I was recently appointed to the advisory board for the vector control. And at my first meeting, I was astonished to hear that Lake Forest has now been notified that there's a very aggressive and new mosquito that was brought in from Asia. That it was brought in and it carries many more diseases than our local mosquito. And this one is a small black, and it attacks only humans, and it attacks during the day. And so they actually want this to be reported because we're trying to get this under hand so we do not have this spread throughout the county. So this is a public health notice that will be on the back door that if you see this mosquito, they're asking that you not call the city hall or city or staff. They want you to call vector control immediately. So this is something we're trying to nip in catch it before it spreads. The first sighting of this was in Mission Viejo last May. And this is usually a time where mosquitoes aren't being bred as many that are out there. So it was unusual that they found the day after our last council meeting on a Wednesday, they actually trapped one in Lake Forest. And so this is the second place for it to fall. The third is up in North Orange County, but LA has already been inundated with these, and we're trying to keep them out of Orange County and trying to get ahead of this. And so this will be on the back door, and there'll be some public health advisory flyers that will be in the back of the room or next to the cookies. And so these will be on the table. Please grab one before you leave and talk about and read about what we can do to prevent the spread of this mosquito, because there's 2 Asian mosquitoes that are now in Southern California, and we want to try to keep them out of Orange County and out of Lake Forest. And that's my advisory to you on that. And I think that Councilman Adam Nick would also like to take a portion of his comments and address it for a 1-minute comment.
Thank you. As heartfelt as this is, given that I don't want to spend more than a minute or so delivering it, I actually wrote myself a note a couple of hours ago. Recently, in speaking with a reporter and in describing what some self-serving deputy district attorney had by fabricating and propagating a criminal case against me, which case should not have existed in the first place and which case was later dismissed, I said that he had raped me and my reputation. I regret that. Although I used the term rape strictly in its meaning of a gross violation of rights, a friend of mine, who is also a mentor to me, reached out to me, and I realized that some people, and in particular victims and survivors of sexual assault and physical forcible rape, may think that I was and I am equating my experience with that of theirs. That certainly was not my intention. I deeply apologize. Once again, I deeply apologize to any victim and their loved ones, any victim of physical rape and their loved ones, and anybody whom I may have offended. You have my sincere apology. For those who are interested to know further, I in fact have now sued the district attorney of the Orange County. That lawsuit, that defamation lawsuit, is available online for those who are interested to read it. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. And that brings us to public comments. Madam Clerk, have we had any comments from the public?
Leah Basil, followed by Doug Ward.
Good evening, Council. What is leadership? I've done a lot of mulling over the last couple weeks about that, and I think in context of this Council, thought it more appropriate to talk about what is not leadership. Leadership is not berating residents in the previous Council meeting, and when the residents get upset, we get timeouts because we were responding because we were being treated poorly. Leadership is not having the sheriff come in and tell all of us to be quiet, muting our First Amendment rights, while the mayor continues to berate us, but this time we can't say anything. Leadership is not calling fellow residents bastards because they're holding out picket signs in front of a new dog park last week. And finally, leadership is not approving 2,300 new homes, increasing road traffic by 80,000 cars a day, with no new roads and no new schools. It is clear, based upon this information, it lends credence to the reason why we are recalling certain members of this council, because we feel that these actions are not, they are not what we expect in our council members. And I would be very happy tonight to save the residents lots of time and money, and I would be happy to receive your resignations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we have a public decorum, and people are sitting here waiting to speak. And when people go beyond their 3 minutes, like they did last meeting, and some of your supporters are rude to those that are waiting in there, they're out of line. The Orange County Sheriff Department is here to enforce the law, and the fact is we have a decorum. And when they go outside that decorum, if you call that lack of leadership on our part, the fact is that you guys acted like tantrum, like children having a tantrum. Thank you. Happy holidays. And that, we're not asking no more response. We're asking.
So I don't get to defend
No, we're actually, you're done. Your time was up. Thank you.
Doug Ward, followed by Andrew O'Connor.
Please, we're not going to have clapping out there in the audience again, because the fact is that you guys took it out of hand last time and were rude to everybody that was here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Doug Ward. I'm a Lake Forest resident, and I also work for a company that's opening a new location here within Lake Forest. I'm here tonight to address the council on a matter that is an embarrassment to our city. I'll keep it brief, as I'm sure you're all aware of the issue. Once again, Lake Forest has been brought into the media spotlight for the wrong reasons due to the action of one rogue council member. Please note I wrote this before Mr. Nick's brief apology. Specifically, I am referring to Mr. Nick's recently published comments wherein he refers to himself as the same as a rape victim. This is disgusting. I believe Mr. Nick owes a formal, and I would suggest published, apology to all victims of sexual abuse. I can't speak for all the victims, but I know this. What he claims to have happened to him is nowhere near the lifetime of pain and suffering that rape victims endure. And if I may direct this last portion towards Councilmember Nick, with all due respect, sir, this is just one of numerous issues that have been brought forth to the public through the media. As a council member, you are to be a servant and a leader to the people that elected you. We don't see any positive press regarding your actions as a city council member like your counterparts. They seem to give of themselves for the community, whereas I can't say that I've seen the same from you. For the sake of the city of Lake Forest and the integrity of the council, I implore you to consider a resignation so that you can get your personal affairs in order and they no longer put a black eye on our community. Thank you for your time. God bless you all. God bless our city.
Thank you.
Andrew O'Connor.
Give me just 1 second. Luckily, the state of California gives me an unalienable right to address the gentleman, however much I need to be brief. Firstly, if somebody is interested to know what I have done in the last 3.5 years or so, please visit my website, adamnick.org. When you go to adamnick.org, from day one to the recent time, everything that I've done for the city is reflected. What is not reflected, that I'm the only one in the history of the city who doesn't even get paid. I waived my pension, my retirement, my income, everything from day one. I have never been paid a dime. I am doing this completely voluntarily and just to give back to the community that I have called home for 30-some years since I was a teenager. That said, someone who does not have a political agenda, having heard my sincere apology, would have probably refrained from coming to the podium and saying what he said. I already addressed that proactively. In fact, I asked Mayor Voigt to allow me to do this ahead of time, ahead of public speaking, because by council comments, most of you are not here. So I did what I could to correct the record. As far as the reporter, I actually called him, reached out to him, and I said that I cannot take back what I said, but I would like you to reflect in the article that I regret that I characterized my horror as such. For whatever political agenda he may have had, he did not. So my apology was not reflected in the article. Lastly, and very quickly, sir, if you were to understand what planes do, if all you knew about airplanes is what you had read in papers, you would think to yourself, wow, what an unsafe mode of transportation. They always crash. The fact of the matter is, newspapers report what is sensational. Sometimes they actually make things up for it to be sensational. They don't report good things. Airplanes are the safest mode of transportation. That's a fact. Newspapers don't tell you that. Newspapers only tell you when trains and airplanes crash. So don't believe everything you read. That's only one-sided. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Andrew O'Connor, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Madam Clerk, can you confirm that the council has my handouts? They don't, so the time does not begin yet, Mayor, until you have my handouts.
Time is received when you would get to the mic.
Well, I respect that you have my handouts, sir, and that's when the time will start. Exhibits also in hand? Mayor,
What's that?
are the exhibits there also?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, I believe I'll start now. I'll start my timer. My name is Andrew O'Connor. I'm from Foothill Ranch, California, since 1990. I'm talking about Saddleback Ranch Road project. What happened at the last City Council meeting on Tuesday, November 17th, 2015, is a microcosm of what is happening as a result of the decision-making of Mayor Voights and Councilman Hamilton and Robinson, along with City Manager Dunnick. The Saddleback Ranch Road project reminds me of the famous quote of Senator Pelosi regarding the Affordable Care Act. We have to pass it just to see what's inside it. This explains the Saddleback Ranch Road project. The construction began before any residents clearly knew the design. Only after the construction began did the residents clearly see what design flaws existed. Yet, City Manager Dunnick approved Saddleback Ranch Road for construction. Let's step back for a moment. The date is May 19th, 2015. Item 14 on the City Council agenda. The bid for slightly over $1 million was awarded to Hillcrest Construction with no blueprints provided for the public or the council to view. Let's step back further. In the original rationale of the project, it was never established, number one, how many accidents occurred on Saddleback Ranch Road. What data suggests medians reduce traffic accidents. At the November 17th, 2015 council meeting, Councilman Hamilton right here had many questions that are still unanswered. Yet change orders are approved in the cost of $70,000. Portola Hills residents still don't know if this is the correct design. Can we believe what Stantec is telling us when the traffic study report of August 2013 for the Auto Center development they undertook was flawed with missing intersections impacting Foothill Ranch Elementary School is outlined in Exhibit 1? Line of sight was mentioned many times in the November 17th, 2015 Saddleback Ranch Road Council meeting. There's a significant line of sight issue I addressed to this council on February 17th, 2015 regarding the intersection of Town Center Drive and Auto Center Drive in the Camden Yards development. Stantec approved this intersection with poor line of sight. This is still has not been addressed. Please see Exhibit number 2. Or perhaps the developer of Camden Yards contributed to the 3 council members, Voights, Robinson, and Hamilton. President Reagan said, tear this wall down.
Your time is up. Thank you. Your time is up. Your time is up. Okay, we've got your exhibit. Thank you for your comments. You can come back at another time. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and City Clerk, I had received complaints before from people that we were short-sheeting them, and so I'm kind of measuring while you're going on with my stopwatch. I only came with 2 minutes, 30 seconds. So I don't know if that's...
Well, according to our timer, so thank you for your comments, and you can come back at a future time or wait to the end. Thank you.
30 seconds is going to make a difference.
You went over a minute and a half last time, so we're asking you to leave the podium now. And if you want them, please, thank you. No, she stayed within her time limit, so we're not debating this. Thank you.
Heiko Peschel, followed by Adria Lewis.
Oh, here we go again. Okay.
Hello, Heiko.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, et cetera, and so on. Heiko Peschel, Foothill Ranch, and I want you to think back a couple of months where a young lady was up here extolling the virtues of lowering everybody's electric and gas bills by installing new windows and solar systems, et cetera, and so on, in return for a small second trust deed on their property, so to speak. Not literally, maybe, but so to speak. But guess what? Ever since you guys approved that, I've been getting nothing but phone calls on a phone number that nobody should be calling without my permission. This number has been on the no-call list forever. The moment I mention it to those folks calling, they say, oh, sorry. But they do call. So if you have any arm-twisting ability at all with those organizations, please tell them to heed the FCC's no-call thing, because if they don't, then I have to report it, and then the FCC will do something, and they will do something. They're pretty good at that. Anyway, I have another item on the agenda later on, so I'll let you have fun. And remember, guys, we're all here to live and enjoy life. Getting mad at each other doesn't really go anywhere for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adria Lewis, followed by Vincent Burke.
Good evening. Voights, don't yell at me. We're Germans, so. and Nick, I'm on your side. And Gardner, I like you. I've talked to you before, so. And apologies to Hamilton. I'm sorry for earlier. You approached me? Yeah. Anyways, that's my. Police are allowed to corruptly keep claiming that they're keeping the peace, keep claiming that they're keeping people safe. In reality, every second in America, they repeatedly antagonize situations with their presence to scam and bank eventually, either with quiet intensity or vocal intensity. They misinterpret situations, twist, bend, add, minus, out details, teach citizens to abuse, teach citizens to hate, project filth onto citizens, create a moment of terror on people, make heated situations worse to scam and bank and fine, heat up citizens. Police act as the aggressor and indirectly attempt to spark illogical thinking onto citizens. They toy with citizens, narrow-mindedly label citizens, which is abuse, ruin self-perception of people to start them spiraling, intend harm on people indirectly or directly, stir up citizens to scam and bank and fine, coax them, harass them, fool them, goad them, push citizens to scam and bank and fine, repeatedly misinterpret situations, which is abuse. I'm kind of an expert on behavior. I'd like to think so. I've been studying them for years. They expect suppression, expect respect, cause anger displacement later on, create rigged snowball effects to scam and bank on citizens later on, ignore phone calls unless they can manipulate situations, claim heroic noble behavior, which is delusional, narrow-mindedly misinterpreting situations corruptly to destroy property, vandalize, kill, or cause damage. My main point is they act like psychics. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Over time, they abuse the weak-minded citizens to claim victory. Instead of abusing citizens to become plagued, homeless, or trouble-bound, level the playing field and make police homeless, plagued, and trouble-bound. Flesh out police every 4 years. If police think citizens' angles are bogus, then every angle made by police is bogus. Citizen abuse is life abuse. Police abuse is life abuse. Animal abuse is life abuse. Thanks.
Vincent Burke, followed by Randy Johnson.
Good evening, Vincent Burke,
Good
Lake
evening.
Forest. When last we met, City Council had expressed grave concern regarding the proposal to require mandatory inspections of garages in relation to the overflow parking permit issuance plan. I don't recall anything being cited in case law where such things have come up as Fourth Amendment violations, but certainly that's not outside the realm of possibility. We have a very litigious society, and people can be very sensitive, even in a voluntary program such as this. What I would like to propose, then, is instead of an active inspection system, is a passive inspections system to be implemented into this program that that staff is currently tweaking. Passive inspection is simply what I have here, and these are simply photographs that I've made from the sidewalk of open garage doors. And on the proposed streets that were discussed in the last meeting, various ones on Mina Court, S. Rose, 2nd Street, all of garages not being used for storage of vehicles, but for storage of all sorts of things from pool tables on up to living quarters. And we see the same thing on Village Drive. Living quarters, dens, recreation rooms, playrooms for the children. Passive inspection is simply something that code enforcement and police services know well and they use on a daily basis. It's called plain view doctrine. When the patrol service is passing by to inspect for permits, they simply need to keep an eye open for these violations as well. There are 3 causes. Time is going to kill me here, but one of the big problems is people not using their garages for parking purposes. The permits treat the symptom, not the cause of this overflow situation. And let's also consider addressing the cause of the overflow, all right? And one of those is garage misuse. Thank you.
Randy Johnson, followed by Chandra Hinton.
I just wanted to add, Vince, that it's a serious problem, and, we've been we make a permit, and we close up this area and then boost in another area. And we can do that only so long. Eventually, we are going to have to deal with the problem. I don't have any great ideas at the moment, but it is a problem. We can't keep permitting and permitting and permitting. There'd be nothing left for everybody else. So we are going to have to deal with it.
Good evening, Council. Randy Johnson from Lake Forest. I didn't plan to go off on this tangent, but, Mr. Mayor, you have a lot of nerve, really, teaching or demanding decorum from the audience after the behavior I've witnessed from this council over the last year, including from you. So for you to lecture them, to me, is laughable. Maybe if you would apologize for your behavior first, maybe then you could tell me how to behave. Fair enough? Okay. What I wanted to talk about tonight was a submission of written documents for the public record. As you know, I submit letters and correspondence to all of you folks before the meetings because I want something down in writing. Plus, in 3 minutes you can't really say that much. And so I want it down in writing for the record and for the public record. The public record being they're entitled to look at it too. Not just the council. This is a public record. And I wonder why it's never posted in the minutes. It's never posted in the minutes that Mr. Johnson submitted a written document or correspondence for the council to read. When you submit something to the county, they actually post it online. So the person doesn't have to walk up to the Hall of Administration and say, can I look at Randy Johnson's correspondence? No. It's right there online. They can just, with a click of the button, they can see what it says. And really, it's an insult to me that this is never talked about, never recorded in the minutes. And I just wonder, does this fall under the Brown Act? It's a public record, and if it's not acknowledged, to me, it seems like it could be a violation. I'm not a lawyer, okay? But the city should look into that. In fact, the city should know. But out of courtesy to the people who take the time and put out the effort to submit a public record document to you, I should be acknowledged for that, and it should be stated at least in the minutes, okay? And out of respect for openness and transparency, which this city supposedly promotes, at least that's what they say over and over again, that they promote transparency and openness, why are they hiding my document from the public? I want them to read it too. They have a right to look at my document just as much as you do. So in the future, please acknowledge that, and please post it maybe under the supporting materials. You could do that, or post it in the minutes. Link it, so everybody can read it. I want my document read by everybody because it contains lots of truth. Thank you.
Chandra Hinton, followed by Robert Glenn.
I think that's a good question for maybe the city attorney. Just briefly, if you could you maybe in 10 words or less say if that's a violation of the Brown Act? I know some attorneys try and go a little longer, but just curiosity.
Yeah, in 2 words, it's not. But as with everything that a lawyer deals with, there's more to it. But it's not a violation of the Brown Act, not to produce that in mass, if you will.
Great, thank you.
Just like to add, I don't care care if it's not a violation of the Brown Act. I think it's a good idea, and in January, we're going to be talking finally about how we do business, so that we can maybe do business a little bit better. So I'd like that to be one of
I'll be brought up.
dozens of ideas. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. State your name again, please.
Chandra Hinton. I've lived in Lake Forest over 20 years. I moved back to Irvine, and then I came back here, right down the street at the new apartments. On September 24th, I opened my door to nigga, and officer came. He said, "There's nothing we can do." I said, "Okay." November the 15th, move black nigga bitch on my door. November the 29th, which was Sunday, I opened my door and it said, "Black lives no die." The officer who came to my house, he said that, "Well, what do you want us to do?" I said, what can you do?" I said. He said, "I don't know. I think it's some person, like just horsing around or whatever. So why do I need to move out of Lake Forest, go back where I came from, or what is the reason that no one will help me?" I seen Catherine last time, and she said, we'll take care of it, but nothing is taken care of, and are we waiting for me to be murdered at my own house? So that's what I'm just trying to figure out. What is it that I can do, or can you guys do anything?
Out of respect, obviously that doesn't reflect the majority of the people of Lake Forest, and obviously there's someone that's been harassing you and being racist towards you, but the fact is I don't think that reflects upon any of us as council members or the community. Ms. Kathy McCullough served for 20 years on the city council as the only black elected female in all of Orange County for 20 years, and so the fact is that the best thing we could do is maybe start a neighborhood watch in your community to where you can have a join with your other community people in your community that can watch out for you, because I don't think that reflects the surrounding neighborhood.
Right.
So enlist that, call our police services, and make an appointment with our community service officer. They'll come out there and help start a neighborhood watch in your community, because that'd be the best thing that we could do, because unless we catch someone, we really can't do anything. So I feel for you. I'm sorry on behalf of the city of Lake Forest. I grieve with you. I've heard about the stories that Kathy went through early on in her career, but just the reflection of that, she served for 20 years on the city council. I don't think that reflects the most of us, and so I am sincere apologies, and call and let's make a neighborhood watch in your community.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas, and I'm so sorry.
Mayor Voice, if I may, real quickly. Madam, if I could beg of you. Thank you, Mayor Voice. I too, of course, most of us have been subject to discrimination and to behavior like this at one point or another, some more, some less. First of all, you said, you asked it, you said it rhetorically, I realize that. You said, do I have to move away and go back to where I came from, or something to that effect you said. I want to say a couple of things. First, if you were to move back or move away, they win, you lose.
Right.
Don't do that, no matter what it takes. Number one. Number two, I'll be more than happy to, I have several properties here and there, and I have a great rapport with a couple of companies who do surveillance. I'll be more than happy at my own expense. I will have a couple of hidden cameras. They don't have to be hidden, but it's your choice, installed, and we're going to have surveillance on your property 24/7 in hopes that we can catch them. If we catch them, great. If we don't, at least they'll be smart enough. If they are visible cameras, they're smart enough not to do it. If they're hidden, then it's a matter of catching and prosecuting. But in any case, it will not cost you a dime, I promise you.
That's gracious.
If you want to take me up on it, just look me up. And the city clerk can give you my phone number. It's available publicly. Okay. Take me up on it.
I did. I just moved in May to the Aurora Baker Ranch.
Okay.
No one knows me. just 3 people, just my neighbors. So I don't understand what's going on.
We'll invite your neighbors to a neighborhood watch at your house or at
Okay.
surrounding neighborhood. Thank you so much.
I promise you, if you were to move from Lake Forest, it'll be because you want to move, not because you're forced to. Call me.
Well, this one Sunday or whatever, I'm thinking to myself, okay, will I be murdered now?
No.
I mean, this is crazy.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll get that neighborhood watch
Okay.
going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Glenn, followed by Derek Weisk.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. As a concerned resident of this beautiful South County community known as Lake Forest, I'm appalled at the antics of Councilman Adam Nick and his disrespect of women, using rape as an example of what happened to him when he got charged with stealing signs in the middle of the night. He is now suing the DA because they did their job. Adam Nick has been nothing but trouble since he entered the world of Lake Forest politics. He is full of vengeance and hate. There has been nothing but problems since he was elected to the City Council. From bringing frivolous lawsuits against the city for giving a liquor license to a business competitor of his and having the city pick up the tab for the legal fees to the tune of $150,000 paid for us by the citizens of Lake Forest, to being caught at 3 a.m. with one of his young male employees picking up political signs of the candidates that he despises, saying that they were placed illegally, even though they were placed next to signs of candidates that he supported. It's not ironic. As a result of being caught, he cut a plea deal with the Orange County District Attorney to pay the Orange County Victims Program the sum of $2,000, in addition to 10 hours community service, to settle the charges against him and tens of thousands of dollars to a criminal attorney. Because the district's attorney was doing his job, Adam Nick has filed a frivolous lawsuit again because he went forward with the charges stemming from the campaign sign fiasco. Not content, this rogue Lake Forest City Council now wants to waste 20% of the city's budget by bringing out a recall of 3 council members he considers his enemies, at a cost to the residents of $250,000. This money that should be spent on more pressing issues like the senior centre, the city hall for Lake Forest, or for the homeless. Adam Nick and Jim Gardner want to bring a dog shelter and place it next to our residential communities. The residents of these neighbourhoods don't deserve to have barking dogs placed across the street from their homes. All of these missteps in judgment reflect upon the character of the man himself. I believe that the residents there in attendance tonight will agree the only council member that should be subject to a recall is the man himself, Adam Nick. Between Adam Nick and Jim Gardner, they have cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars to date. They have caused massive infighting and disharmony with the other sitting council members who are largely responsible for making Lake Forest a great place to live, work and play. Our state-of-the-art sports park and dog park are just a couple of examples that come to mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, please don't walk away.
We're not having a conversation.
No, there's no conversation. Luckily, the state gives me this right to address you briefly, however. I do know for a fact you are a buddy, a very dear friend of Mr. Voigt's, and that of...
I would say everybody's a friend of mine.
No.
In fact, you called me friend.
He was your campaign advisor. He actually distributed flyers for you and for Dwight and for Andrew. So, first of all, you must know, and you do know, 90+% of what you said is untrue. And you may not know the laws here in the United States, but you are liable for what you say, especially in public, recorded. 90+% of what you said is untrue, as far as the money that I paid and whatever else you said, number one. Number two, there is no credibility and credence to what you said because of your ties with the 3 gentlemen to my immediate left. So, please, you're just being a political hack, you're being used. Wise up. Thank you.
Derek Weisk.
While the next speaker's coming to the mic, Councilmember Nick, did he also distribute flyers for you? Because you brought my name into it. So
Yes, he did. He distributed flyers for all of us, and he was paid by me in my campaign. Yes, correct.
I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. Yes, he's basically a mercenary.
Just to add, he didn't distribute any flyers for me.
No, he did not distribute for Dr. Gardner, just for the four of us to the right of Dr. Gardner.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Derek Wiesk, resident of Lake Forest for about 20 years. First of all, I just wanted to say, council members, to all of you, thank you so much for serving the city. I know you have a very difficult job getting up there, whatever side of the debate you're on, and taking the abuse from your residents. So I wanted to just come tonight. There's been a lot of negative things said in the last few weeks, so I just wanted to focus on a few positive things. First of all, Saddleback Ranch Road. From my perspective, that ended up being a win-win. And I wanted to take a minute to thank your city staff, particularly Dave Rogers, Tom Wheeler, and the city manager, for being very responsive from my perspective and listening and acting very quickly. I think, it ended up with a very positive result, and some of you know I'm a cyclist, so thank you very much for making it a more bike-friendly project. Also wanted to thank you for the dog park. There was a real nice event this week, a real positive event, and again, an example where the city staff and the council listened. There was a demand for a dog park, and you built one. So thank you very much for that. Also, your El Toro High School liaison, Miss McCullough, she's very humble, but I found out recently she was selected to be on the U18 national soccer team. So that's a huge undertaking, and I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate her. And finally, big news, Councilmember Dwight Robinson, I think, is owed a big congratulations. He was recently appointed to the AQMD, and that is a huge accomplishment to have someone from the small city of Lake Forest be appointed to a body that represents literally millions of people. So I wanted to just give it a little shout out to Councilmember Dwight Robinson, and thank you for representing our community and all of Southern California. That's all.
Thank you.
There have been no further requests.
Okay, then we'll move on with city business. That brings us to the Warrant Registry. All matters listed on the Warrant Registry are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the Warrant Registry for separate action. Have there been any requests to remove anything from the public?
There have been no requests.
Colleagues, I'll entertain motions.
I'll move the warrant register.
I'll second.
Okay, colleagues, cast your votes.
That motion carries unanimously.
We're moving right along. Brings us to the consent calendar. Items number 3 through 7. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of the City Council, the public, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Have there been any requests to remove any item from the consent calendar?
We've had no requests.
Colleagues, I'll entertain motions.
Motion to move the items.
Second that. Colleagues, cast your votes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Well, that brings us to discussion items. Item number 8.
Agenda item 8, animal control service model alternatives and potential shelter sites identified by the City Council, submitted by City Manager.
Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm going to turn a presentation over to Deborah Rose and Carlo Tomaino for this evening's agenda item on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor and the City Council, it looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, but hopefully it will catch up as we go. So, for the benefit of the audience, I'll be starting with some background information to explain how we got to where we are now. So, this portion of the slide that is cut off, do we want to take a photo?
Could we just take a couple-minute break so that we can get this fixed and
Yes, thank you.
okay. All right.
Okay, we'll take a 4-minute break, please.
When you get here, then press down. So when something, I always like this one. Through the light. Board has not been on and it's
Council, if I could please call council back to dais. I'd like to reconvene this meeting. Get more going with item number 8. Madam Clerk, can we proceed on now? Okay, reconvene the Lake Forest City Council meeting and bring us... No? We're having technical difficulty with the slide presentation, the PowerPoint. 1 second, please. Okay, we have our slide presentation again, so I'd like to convene the meeting again. Thank you so much. Bring it back to staff. Deborah Rose.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for a do-over. Okay, Mayor and members of the City Council, as I previously mentioned, I'd like to start with some background for the benefit of the audience to explain how we got to where we are now. So on June 16th, the City Council obtained a consensus for a general discussion of animal control services. So on July 21st, that discussion took place, and the discussion centered on a response to the Orange County Grand Jury report that had been issued about the state of the Orange County Animal Shelter. After discussion, the City Council voted to direct the mayor and staff to work with the mayors and staff of other South Orange County cities to explore alternatives, namely alternatives to contracting with the County of Orange for animal control services. In September, the county distributed a draft business plan, and in that plan, they estimated that they would be opening their shelter in 2019. In October, the county made a new announcement saying, we have advanced our project by 2 years, and we will be opening our shelter in September of 2017. So at that point in time, the staff came back to the council in November to give you an update on what we had been doing in terms of exploring alternatives and also getting further direction from the council on what additional information they would like added to a report that the staff was working on that would be presented on December 1st. And the direction that we received from the council was to add an analysis of 3 sites in Lake Forest to be a potential site for an animal shelter. And those 3 sites were the Authority Parcel, the Future Civic Center site, and the Normandale Park site. And so we began our exploration of options by looking at what were the service models in place in Orange County. And so I'll briefly go over this map. The 3 red dots on the map represent the 3 cities in the county, Irvine, Laguna Beach, and Mission Viejo, that currently provide their own animal shelter and their own services for animal control. To the south, there's a purple dot that represents a joint powers authority where the cities of Dana Point and San Clemente have formed a joint powers authority to provide animal control service and an animal shelter. There are also several blue dots on the map. These are shelters that are operated by nonprofits. Some of those shelters serve city and some are just independently operating. For example, you have the Westminster Animal Care Center, which is operated by a group called WAGS, and they provide the sheltering service, and the City of Westminster employees provide animal control. Another example is the Seal Beach Animal Care Center, located in Seal Beach. That operates as an independent shelter. The City of Seal Beach actually contracts with the City of Long Beach for animal control and animal sheltering. We've also added to the map, as of last week, the location in Newport Beach. Newport Beach recently announced last week that they are leaving their current service provider, the Orange County Humane Society, and they're moving their sheltering operations to this other location. And then finally, the 2 green dots represent the county. The green dot in orange is the current site of the Orange County Animal Shelter. The dot that's in Tustin is the proposed site for their new animal shelter. And so based on what we found, before we leave the map, one thing that we did do, and this was prior to Newport Beach leaving Orange County Humane Shelter, was to calculate the distance from residential that each of these shelters were from the center point of the nearest residential parcel to the animal shelter to come up with what was the average distance in Orange County from an animal shelter to a residence. And what we found was it was 950 feet. Now, this calculation did not include the new Newport Beach location. Okay, moving on. Based on this, we looked at these 5 service delivery alternatives, and in this presentation, I will go over those. So the first being direct provider. Now, in this alternative, it is literally the city owning its own animal shelter and providing these services with city employees. There could be a mix of contracts involved, for example, contracting for veterinarian services. There's also some permutations where you could contract with a nonprofit to run the shelter and so forth. But essentially, the direct service model gives you the most control over the level of service you would like to provide to the community for this service. So, for example, the city would adopt the user fees, would approve all operating policies such as your admission policy, your volunteer policies, euthanasia policies, operating hours. All of that would be in the direct control of the council. Now, the council would also assume all the risk for this service and all the liability for this service. To the extent that we're using city employees, the city would assume the pension liability as well as the salaries for that. And the city would have direct control over what the service costs were. They would be approving the budget. Your residents would have an elected representation that was controlling that, meaning the city council. And there would also be opportunities for volunteering, for public education. And finally, for people that are very interested in animals, for those who this is their passion, it would provide a community gathering point to really spend time with animals and to volunteer and so forth. But that community gathering point would be local, it would be in their own city. And so to pursue this direct service model, obviously it would start with building an animal shelter. And so per your direction, we did analyze these 3 sites for their potential for that. And at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to the assistant to the city manager, Carlo Tomaino, who's going to give you a review of what we found with those sites.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As Deborah noted, what we did for you is we did a literature review and examined shelter siting criteria in different parts of the country to try to come up with what we think are the general criteria for an animal shelter so that we could use to create some kind of comparison using this criteria for the sites that you identified previously. So what I'd like to do initially is just go over some of these sites, some of these criteria briefly with you before we go into the analysis of the site. So one of the primary criteria that we found that was important is visibility. So you want your animal shelter to be highly visible, becoming sort of a part of the community so that people become familiar with it. Hopefully they'll volunteer there. More importantly even, they'll adopt animals from the shelter. Going along with that, you want an animal shelter to be visible, accessible, and centrally located. And generally by centrally located, we found the envelope of driving time, including traffic, is about 15 to 20 minutes. In addition, the ideal animal shelter site would have clearly sufficient acreage to accommodate an animal shelter, but also the more modern, humane practices that go with an animal shelter, such as indoor-outdoor kennels and spaces to walk and recreate the animals at some time during the day. In addition, there are other criteria that are important, such as a permissible use within the zoning code, land use compatibility. You'd want a site that is generally free of land use restrictions, and you want to create a sufficient separation, as Deborah described, from the homes. We found that the linear county average was 950 linear feet, but that's not set in stone. It could be less, it could be more, and a lot of that has to do with the neighborhood tolerance, quite frankly. How does the neighborhood feel about having an animal shelter near their homes? So that's how we evaluated the sites, and I want to show a couple here of current sites that we use as a comparison. So what we did is we took the Mission Viejo site, the Irvine site, and the future OCAC site and looked at some of those criteria on a basic level, and then we'll look at the 3 sites. So here we have the Irvine Animal Shelter, and what's interesting about this is that it's located in an area that is away from residential uses, so generally non-commercial, light industrial, and office. You've got a railroad just behind here. It's on a 3.75 acre site, and it's along major arterial roadways. So you've got Sand Canyon Avenue, and you've got Irvine Center Drive. And like I said, it's generally located away from homes. The nearest distance is approximately 1,700 linear feet for that site.
Could you just go back to that slide? Is the green homes? Is that, or
No.
is there no homes on that picture?
No, we don't have the graphics displayed because we wanted to keep this clear for you. But the homes are located to the southwest. You see that red parcel that's sort of almost outside of the frame there? That's where you start to have some high-density residential in Irvine if you looked into the southwest direction, the red parcel. Thank you. That would be the nearest. You're welcome. And so the next sites that we looked at for comparative purposes are the Mission Viejo Animal Shelter. So that's situated on a 6.2 acre property. It's generally surrounded by an open use, open recreational use, other non-commercial uses. It's, again, near a heavily trafficked roadway, in this instance, Marguerite Parkway. And what you find is that the Mission Viejo Animal Shelter is approximately 1,200 feet away from residential, the nearest being the apartments that you see right up along Marguerite if you look to the northwest on that map. And then the third example that we have for you before we go into the sites is the future Orange County Animal Care Shelter. That's situated on a 6.7 acre parcel, again surrounded generally by light industrial, office, non-residential, commercial type uses. That site is not yet clearly developed, but it will be located along some major arterial roadways. It's sandwiched essentially in between Red Hill Avenue and Armstrong Avenue. So again, it has visibility, accessibility, the kinds of criteria that you might want to find in an animal shelter. And the closest that shelter will be located to homes is approximately 1,900 linear feet. We don't have that yet because the site and the area is not developed, but that's what we found. So now moving on, we have the first of the three sites. So what we have here in each instance is an aerial of the property to the left, and to the right what we did is we looked at the criteria and we checked those off one by one to see how closely or not closely the parcel would match the criteria. Now, I think it's important to note that it's not that any one of these things would necessarily disqualify a site. It's that the ideal site would likely check many of the boxes. So this is here for comparative illustrative purposes for you, and I'll go through these one by one and explain how we got here. So the authority parcel is situated right off El Toro Road.
Just wanted to make one correction to that. There is one category that is kind of overriding, and that's permissible use. So if it's not permissible, then the rest of the categories kind of don't matter.
Well, in terms of you're talking about the zoning, yeah. Dr. Gardner. I mean, that zoning can always be changed, right? I think one of the most important criteria that you have. Excuse me. One of the most important criteria that you have is actually the legal issues. So I'm not sure if you're referring to the legal issues or the zoning.
No, I was referring to the legal permissible uses.
Correct. Okay, understood. Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, not the zoning per se, but the legal permitted uses.
Right, understood.
So that there's necessary and sufficient, but by itself, that one would eliminate any of the property.
I tend to agree, but we'll get to that for each of the sites. So for the authority parcel, you can see this from El Toro Road, so it's clearly visible to the community if you had a site there. It's accessible in terms of the area, how to get to it, but the problem with this parcel is that it's currently not attached to any public road, so it's landlocked. So the uses that surround the property, as you can see, are the railroad property, you've got El Toro Road, you've got Kingdom Hall Church, you've got the Forest Glen Apartments, and then you've got the single-family residential homes. So that is the situation with this property. Like I said, it's centrally located in the service area, which is generally a good thing, but it is not listed as a permissible use in the city's zoning code. I think we would find that it's perhaps not generally compatible as land use. It doesn't provide the kind of separation from homes that you might otherwise want, and it is not free of the legal restrictions or encumbrances relating to the land. So in this instance, what you see here is a bifurcated property. You've got the authority parcel in orange, which is bordered by the paper streets, and the paper streets are actually owned by the city. About 7 years ago, the city, through an eminent domain action, took the paper streets, called Front and Ullman, because the city couldn't identify the property owner and wanted to put the site together. The paper streets and the use of those streets are actually restricted by the resolution adopted by the council for a very finite, limited set of uses. The authority parcel, the bigger piece, is a housing authority asset, meaning that it's literally, at this point, set aside for affordable housing purposes, meaning that the city would have to acquire the property from the housing authority. And the range of costs there is approximately $900,000. So that's our assessment of the first property. The second site the council asked us to look at is the Civic Center site. So the Civic Center site is approximately 11.9 gross acres, and currently there's really not a lot there. You've got IRWD and their public facilities to the south. That's what you see in blue. You've actually got some homes over to the east. I believe that's the Autumnwood neighborhood. To the west, that big sort of yellow piece is a future residential development, and then you've got some light industrial uses to the north. Again, using the criteria as our basis, we found that the parcel isn't visible necessarily from a major arterial roadway. Its accessibility currently is limited in the sense that there's no road, and so that road would come to fruition at a future point once the development and the Civic Center site are being built. It is, we found, generally centrally located within the proposed service area, but it shares some of the limitations of the other sites. For example, it's not listed as a permissible use within the zoning code. We'd probably find that it's not compatible with adjacent land uses given the future homes. It does not, given our criteria for 950 linear feet, provide sufficient separation. And it is not free of the legal restrictions or encumbrances related to the land. This is, I think, the point that Dr. Gardner was making earlier. In this instance, the Civic Center site and its use is limited by the development agreement between the city and the property owner. And the animal shelter is listed specifically as a prohibited use. So that's our assessment of the Civic Center site. Moving on to the last site is Normandale Park. So Normandale Park is approximately 10.7 gross acres. As you can see from the map there, there's a lot of green, meaning there's a lot of open space in this area, including the park itself, Regency Park to the south. You've got another open space parcel to what I'd call the northwest, and then to the east you have the sports park. Of course, though, you see to the south, and then very close to the property, you see homes, including the Whistler Ridge development. Right? Again, going back to our criteria, and we look at these one by one, the site doesn't generally have visibility for major arterial roadways. It's accessible. I think creating a road to that property wouldn't present much of an issue. It is, depending on how you look at the service area, so if you're looking at a service area that is just Lake Forest, you could say that it's centrally located within the service area. If you expanded that service area to include an adjacent city, perhaps you'd be outside of the driving time envelope that's generally desired for animal shelters. Again, it's not listed as a permissible use within the city's zoning code. We'd find, given the proximity to homes, that it's perhaps not a compatible adjacent land use. It, again, does not provide a sufficient separation from residential land uses greater than 950 linear feet. And importantly, it's not free of the legal restrictions or encumbrances relating to the land. In this instance, what we have is a property that the city controls that was granted to the city or given to the city through an IOD, an irrevocable offer of dedication from the Homeowners Association that was specifically given to the city for parks and recreational uses only. And I think at this time we would probably not say that an animal shelter meets the definition of a park and recreational use. So that's a significant limitation there. And that really does, I think at this point, conclude my presentation of an analysis of the sites. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But for this time, I'm going to turn the presentation back to the Assistant City Manager, Deborah Rose.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to alternative number 2, which is contracting with a neighboring city. And again, with this model, consistent with the contract city approach, to the extent that you are happy with the service level provided by the neighboring city, not having direct control is probably less of a concern. But with this one, the governing body of that neighboring city is the one that's adopting fees, is assuming the pension liability, and so forth. It still offers volunteer opportunities and opportunities for public education, but there is no gathering point. That facility in Lake Forest obviously would be in the neighboring city. In terms of assuming risk or transferring risk, it really would be based on the terms of the contract with a neighboring city. And so to initially look at that alternative, if we could go to the next slide, we contacted the potential service providers. With the City of Irvine, we talked to the staff who stated that there are some operational and site constraints that they are dealing with, but ultimately any decision to contract with a neighboring city would be the decision of the Irvine City Council. The City of Laguna Beach indicated to us that they do not have the capacity at their shelter facility to take on the City of Lake Forest size. With the City of Mission Viejo, they indicated to us that they would not respond to an RFP should we issue one, because they have an alternative method that they use to evaluating when looking at bringing on additional contract partners. And so that process is one they are going through right now with the City of Rancho Santa Margarita. And it starts with the city sending a letter to Mission Viejo to request a proposal from them. That letter is presented by the Mission Viejo staff to the Mission Viejo City Council with some initial cost estimates. And at that point, they ask the council for direction as to whether they would like to authorize the staff preparing a formal proposal to that other entity. And so for your information, we did attach to the staff report the staff report prepared by the Mission Viejo staff that talks about preliminary costs for bringing on a new contract partner. At that point, they would generate a formal proposal which would be considered by both cities. So to give you an example of costs, this is a comparison of what is budgeted for the net costs for the cities that are contracting with Mission Viejo, Laguna Niguel, and Aliso Viejo, and compares it to Lake Forest. This slide is simply to show a cost comparison. We are not implying that the levels of service are the same, the operating philosophies are the same. This is simply net cost comparisons. And so what you can see in the slide is on a per capita basis, the cities are paying about $6 per capita based on what they've budgeted for this year. If they were to bring in another contract partner, that most likely would go down. Lake Forest is paying a little above $3, but again, as we pointed out in the staff report, we do anticipate needing to amend our budget for animal control in this fiscal year, so that number most likely would go up. We don't anticipate it reaching $6 per capita, but it would go up beyond what we're showing here. Okay, alternative number 3 is forming a joint powers authority. And there's 2 ways the city could participate in this. We could request to join the existing joint powers authority that is serving San Clemente and Dana Point. We have not contacted them at this point. Or should the city build its own shelter, we could look at forming a joint powers authority with another city or cities to share in the governance of that as a service model. So again, with the Joint Powers Authority, you are creating an additional layer of government. And so any risk is the risk of the JPA, but as a member of that JPA, the city ultimately would have some financial responsibility should there be a lawsuit or any such thing as that. The employees of the Joint Powers Authority are simply that. They are not city employees. And the city would not directly approve operating policies. The JPA board would, but there would be city council members conceivably on that board. And again, it would be similar to what you see with the Orange County Fire Authority.
Deborah, can we go back to the last slide once
Sure.
again? I'm sorry for my eyes, but if you could talk to what the blue, what are those indications? To me, I think it's Mission Viejo. Could you go through the blue?
Sure. We
bar
are
lines?
showing their general fund contribution. So this is the net number. So
How much
this
does
is
Mission Viejo
after,
pay?
They're paying a little under $600,000, and on a per capita basis, that works out to about $6 per capita.
Okay, next.
And then Laguna Niguel is paying about $400,000. Same per capita. Aliso Viejo is paying about $300,000. And Lake Forest, we're paying a little over $200,000.
Okay, and that's
260,
because that's per capita. That's divided by the cost, and so it's coming down. That's why we're less because of the size of the cities.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, now on the pink.
On the pink, we're showing what we're paying on a per capita basis. So it's taking that net number and it's dividing it by the population of each city. The population is from the Department of Finance. And so it's giving you $6 per capita for the Mission Viejo, Laguna Niguel, and Aliso Viejo. And for the city, it's a little over $3.
Okay, thank you. You can move on now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, and I don't want to belabor it because Mission Viejo has, is probably not going to take us, neither is Irvine. So it's not, I don't want to get too carried away discussing it. But from the financial point of view, to some extent, the figures are subject to distortion. For example, Mission Viejo, Laguna Niguel, Aliso Viejo pay much fewer fees and taxes, etc. Their citizens pay much less for their dog licenses, for their late fees, etc., etc. So that, and when I asked the Mission Viejo City Council, why, because that means the city has to pay more for it, then the Mission Viejo City Council said, well, we feel that's our civic duty, and we don't mind paying more than the residents do. So, in fact, to some extent, the differences there are being distorted by the fact that we're paying significantly higher fees than those people pay. And that's done on purpose by that.
I wouldn't say it's distorted. I would say that it's a decision of the governing body. The county system is designed to be paid by user fees. And I think it's a philosophical decision by the governing body.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yes, but those numbers are correct. So
The numbers are correct, but they don't take into account the fact that if Mission Viejo charged their citizens as much as the county charged our citizens, the differences would be very minimal between the cities.
It's not really time for us to debate, but I just want to chime in real quick on this. And that's that when you pay it out of the general fund, that means that every single person, regardless of whether they have a pet, pays the fee. So if you have a family of 4 and they don't have a pet, and it's a $6 per capita charge, that family is paying $24 and doesn't even have a pet. So again, it's a policy decision, between the Board of Supervisors with our representative Lisa Bartlett, and then the Mission Viejo Council and Irvine Council, and how they decide to do it. But I wouldn't argue with the number. I agree that it's probably somewhat.
And I don't think it's a good idea. I didn't think it was a good idea either. I'm just saying the reality is that there is a fee difference in there that they chose to do, but I agree with you completely. That puts a burden on other people.
Correct. Thanks.
Please continue.
Okay, so moving on. Again, the staff report talks about what the differences on a joint powers authority is. So moving on. Okay, alternative number 4 is contracting with a nonprofit organization. And again, I briefly touched on this. It could be one of 2 ways. We could find a nonprofit organization that currently has a shelter and request a proposal from them and evaluate them as a service provider as an alternate to the county. Also, should the city build its own shelter, we could look at contracting with a nonprofit organization to operate the shelter for us and simply have field services provided by city employees. And again, this looks very similar to operating our own, where the city would have more control should we own the shelter and contract with a nonprofit, have much more direct control over the level of service provided, the budgeted costs, and so forth. And again, an example of this is Westminster and their WAGS animal shelter. Okay, alternative number 5 is to continue contracting with the Orange County Animal Control. And so again here, this is the one that the city has been doing since incorporation, and we are one of 18 cities, and so we have much less influence over the service level and the operating decisions. With this, we are transferring our risk to the county. The county does indemnify us, and there have been situations with other cities where there have been lawsuits brought over the services, and the county does defend, and should there be a judgment, the county would be responsible for that. Lake Forest residents do have an elected representative on the Board of Supervisors. There are volunteer opportunities at the Orange County Animal Shelter, opportunities for public education. And according to our community survey, which is statistically significant, done by True North Research, 92% of residents do indicate they are satisfied with animal control services. And for Lake Forest, the estimate so far, and this is very preliminary, but Lake Forest's share for the design and construction of the new county shelter would be between $500,000 and $920,000. Again, this is very preliminary, but just to give you a sense of what that could be. Okay, these are the service costs for 14-15. Our total cost for the service, so this is the gross number, was $575,000. The revenue that we were credited with by the county was $374,000. And so our general fund contribution, or our net cost, was a little over $200,000. And to give you a sense of how those costs break down, I broke them into the 3 main categories. So field services was 39%, special services was 45%, and special services encompasses all the licensing activities. So that's canvassing, licenses, and so forth, inspections of businesses, and so forth that are related to animals. And then the shelter services is 16% of our costs, and those are based on usage. So they call it animal charge days. And so we're allocated our costs based on our animal charge days. So as the City Council starts to discuss this issue, we just wanted to leave you with two important dates. As I said earlier, the county has expedited its schedule for building its shelter by 2 years. And so they have indicated to us that they would like a decision from all of the cities as to whether you are in or out by April 1st of 2016. So should the city wish to pursue an alternative other than the county, whether that be a permanent service provider or an interim service provider, those services would need to be in place by September of 2017, because that is what the county has estimated to be the opening date for their new shelter. And that concludes our presentation, and Carlo and I are available to answer any questions that the council may have.
I see that she has a really thick stack, so my preference would be that we go to public comment. On a previous issue, a couple of meetings ago, we had a lot of people out in the audience. We ended up debating for like an hour, and they got really frustrated.
We will actually. I'm actually going to say that, from past experience, we will let the public go first. And so, Madam Clerk.
Thomas Williams, followed by Jamie Acantilado.
Mayor, Council.
Good evening.
My name is Tom William. I've been a resident since 1979, so I'm an old timer. I think the idea of going with the county is wonderful. I think they're building a new shelter. I think we should do it. The areas that are proposed, the 3 areas, they're not going to work. So I'm in favor of letting Orange County take care of it. That's it.
Thank you.
Jamie Acantilado, followed by Samuel Tung.
Good evening, Mayor Voights and members of the City Council.
Good evening.
My husband Neil and I have 2 rescue dogs that we love dearly as members of our family. We believe that animal shelters are necessary, as we have experienced the important service they do provide. However, Neil and I, who are homeowners in Whistler Ridge, are concerned about such a shelter being built so close to residential property, and believe it is not feasible at the Normandale site, just as we heard from the presentation. We purchased our home in Lake Forest because of the natural beauty of the open spaces within and surrounding the city. In fact, the deciding factor in buying our home on Poplar Court was the view of the large open space located on Regency. We were told that it was designated by the city as green space and zoned for the express and limited purpose of park and recreation only. Assured by the builder, we paid a hefty lot premium for the sole purpose of enjoying the natural beauty of the open space that first drew us to this great city. We hope that we have not been deceived. Though some may believe that noise might not be an issue, an animal shelter located on that same hill area will undoubtedly create perpetual and unending noise that will affect all homes because of the unrelenting howling, yelping, and barking of all the dogs in the facility. We have been awakened on occasion by coyotes in the middle of the night. They howl and yap for about 10 minutes and go silent. Our 2 rescue dogs that sleep indoors react to the coyotes and start barking and will not stop until we quiet them. The reverberating echoes of the barking and howling of domestic dogs, shelter dogs, and coyotes will create a complex, emotionally disturbing situation that will disrupt the delicate environmental balance of the area. I cannot even imagine the level of stress and noise pollution that this disruption would cause in our quiet community. Neil and I are hopeful that the mayor and Lake Forest Council members will find a solution to this problem that will not cause property values to drop, that will keep our beloved city a desirable one in which to live, and we respectfully request that the Normandale Park site be officially removed from consideration. Thank you.
Samuel Tung, followed by Ronald Pay.
We're going to refrain from the clapping, and so we've had that in the past, so if you could please refrain from that and just allow them to speak, and we'll move right along. Thank you.
Mayor and the member of council members, my name is Samuel Tong. As a father and husband and homeowner of Lake Forest, I oppose the proposal to build an animal shelter within Lake Forest city limits. There are some reasons. The first is the legitimacy, and the item will be, the first one will be zoning code. According to City Council agenda report, none of proposed location listed as permissible use within city zone code. So that's problem one. And problem two is the spatial interest. So the member of the councilman, one of them or few of them might be the benefit party of one of proposed location. And the potential benefit for having animal shelter against public interest, and especially for the member of council should do the best to avoid the conflict of interest for proposing anything like this. And the following is the concern. Safety. It's not safe for having animal shelter that built on the hill along the narrow road were close to one of most dense residential area in Lake Forest. Who would be responsible for the safety for the drivers, children around the area? Who would be responsible for the escaping animals that might attack residents? Who would be responsible for the fear and loss of sleep? The second, wasteful spendings. Building and maintaining animal shelter is the best example of wasting spendings. Contracting animal control to the neighborhood is only less cost compared to building animal shelter. So last is the property value. The value will be affected by and decreased significantly due to the communication of location real estate agents, communication of the local real estate agents, who will be responsible for the loss of hard-earned money from homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ronald Pay, followed by Andrew Lamming.
By the way, thank you for mentioning your street. I looked up Poplar and saw exactly where that was, so thank you.
Hello, Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
My name is Ron Pay, and I live in the new Whistler Ridge development, specifically on Poplar Court, and I'm one of the many residents that did pay a pretty hefty fee to live there to look at the green space. With only having 3 minutes, I hope to get across only 2 points that are proposed on the location of the animal shelter, about the noise pollution, and the other is the effect on the community, specifically our children. I understand from Dr. Gardner's email we've had some communication, and I quote, "Quite frankly, I don't understand your concern about the imminent noise pollution. You question the validity of the study that I referenced about the sound levels in the animal shelters, and that, quote, once again, it did not measure the sound levels in newly constructed homes located 500 feet or more from the shelters. To let you know, my house with a rangefinder from where you stood and did your non-scientific test is about 70 feet from my porch, from line of sight, with a rangefinder. It may not be exactly what you measured, but that's what I have right now. And I'm one of the closest houses to this development. Using the formula on sound propagation, referencing sound intensity in various distances, and I have my calculations if you want to see them, I calculated the conversion sound from 50 to 125 feet, ranging from 90 decibels to 110 decibels. The calculated average sound reaching my back window where our bedrooms are ranges from 55 decibels to 75 decibels. The second point of reference is the probable effect on my children, the fact that on their effect on sleeping patterns. There is an article in 2012 by Still and she did a sleep, cognition, and behavioral problems in school-age children, a 10-year study meta-analysis on 86 studies involving 35,000 kids, ranging from 5 to 12, and she found the shorter episodes negatively affected their cognitive functions. Are you willing to risk the development of our children by putting an animal shelter that close? To give you an idea, this is actually 55 decibels on a small dog. This is going to be at my back window 24 hours a day. And this is only 55 decibels that I've measured. I have a larger speaker that I could take it up to 75, but this is an example of what I'll end up doing. When talking about your study, your method, you even said it was quote-unquote non-scientific. Without a good scientific methodology, you actually in your email said you had, but it does give us two important pieces of information. Without any scientific methodology, there is no information that you can conduct. And you can conclude from that, from you having a non-scientific study. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Lamming, followed by John Naw.
Last night on my way home from a meeting with the Board of Supervisors, I was passing the Irvine Animal Shelter. So I thought to myself, well, here's a real opportunity. So I stopped in the parking lot, and I have a 12-minute video that we can show. And I go inside the shelter, and I walk as far back as 400 feet from the shelter, and I walk back and forth between the Irvine Animal Shelter in there's a video. So you can actually hear the amount of ambient noise 400 feet from the Irvine Animal Shelter, and we can play it afterwards, and that's a better example of what kind of noise is generated by the shelter. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Lamming. I'm also a homeowner near the proposed Normandale Park site and want to express my strong opposition to that site, really for three main reasons. First, it's not compatible with the adjacent residential use. Noise pollution, I don't want to belabor that. There's been scientific studies done on that. Odors, increased commercial traffic are huge concerns. Property values will plummet, eroding the tax base. As we saw in the staff report, most of the direct service provider facilities are well over 1,000 feet away from the nearest lot line, and this one's only 75 feet, which is a little crazy. Second, it's not even an effective location to maximize adoption and retrieval rates, which, after all, are the goals of a shelter. It's not centrally located within the city. It's not near the freeway. It's not visible from any major arterial roads. You can really only see it from Regency Lane, which is a small, neighborhood road, and for that matter, only when you're heading northwest because of the slope and the bend in the road. All these would go to diminish access and traffic to and from the shelter, which would just reduce its effectiveness on the whole. Third, and most importantly, it's not compatible with the current land use designation of the site itself. As was mentioned in the staff report, it was originally dedicated by the developer for, quote, park and recreation purposes. So we have a private deed restriction on title that is already a problem. The staff report states that, quote, an animal shelter likely does not meet the definition of a recreational use. I think we can all agree that's rather obvious, despite the nebulous language used. But I want to highlight the fact that the city's own zoning code is crystal clear on this point. The site is zoned community park / open space, and pursuant to the land use matrix in the zoning code, section 9 of our very own municipal code, all animal-related uses are expressly prohibited. There's no interpretation necessary whatsoever. Lastly, I just want to emphasize the fact that the staff report states that a potential site should have, quote, a positive rating of most or all of the criteria specified. This site only received a positive rating in one out of the criteria. So for all these reasons, I would ask that it would be removed from consideration.
Thank you.
John Naw, followed by Don Martin.
Hello, members of the council. My name is John Naw, and I live in the new Whistler Ridge community. I'm also a proud dog owner. We have a mini Schnauzer. It has come to my attention that a shelter is proposed at a location adjacent to our community. You might say I'm an animal lover, but I am also opposed to this proposal for two reasons. Number one, when we purchased our home several years ago, one of the selling points for this community was that the land near the proposed shelter area was to remain green space. Some of our neighbors, in fact, contacted city officials at the end of 2012 to confirm the green space zoning. Based on the land zoning rules alone, I don't understand why this great city of Lake Forest is going down the path of illegal construction plans. Number two, the thought of numerous dogs and animals at a shelter adjacent to our community and the noise level is likely to be overwhelming for our community. It is my understanding that animal shelters are to be at minimum distances from residential communities, and based on this, the proposed shelter site is too close in proximity. In closing, I also want to mention that I'm a representative HOA board member of our great Whistler Ridge community, and as a member of the board, we will continue our research into the legalities of the proposed animal shelter site and make sure the great city of Lake Forest is abiding by the rules we all follow. We do have legal representation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Martin, followed by Debbie Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo, and council members for letting us speak tonight. My name is Donnie Martin. I live in the Lion Park side. I'm a resident of Lake Forest over 20 years. It has come to my attention as well that some of the council members want to build an animal shelter in our neighborhood. This would bring unwanted traffic, constant noise from the animals. We already hear the coyotes every night. Why would we want to subject ourselves to listening to barking dogs all day and all night? Not to mention, it would also cause a decrease in our property values. Why would you build a shelter when other cities are closing them due to the financial and legal burdens they bring? Seen the Orange County Register, dated November 25th, 2015. Council members, please take a look at the room. The room is full of people that don't want this. Your own staff report shows that 92% of the citizens are satisfied with our animal services that we currently have. When we elect city officials, we are hoping that they use good judgment in the decisions that they make, decisions that help grow our cash reserves and make our city safer and better place to live. When the city's own staff reports state that this spot is not suitable for a shelter due to its close proximity to homes, how does it make sense for you to consider it? Spending our cash reserves is not in the best interest of the people of Lake Forest. It serves to support the personal agenda, it seems, of a couple of our own council members that want an animal shelter. Again, please take a look at the room. The people of Lake Forest don't want this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie Ray, followed by Carlos Ray.
I just would please implore one member of the audience, Randy Johnson, to please refrain from laughing at the speakers. I think it's very disrespectful. They have very legitimate comments, and it just you've done that twice now. So please just be respectful for the residents speaking at the dais here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Debbie Ray, and I am part of Lake Forest, Lake 1. I think it is mandatory that we have an animal shelter. The size of Lake Forest alone mandates that we take control of our animals. I live very close to the train tracks, so at 3:05 a.m. I've awakened every morning listening to a freight train going by. I've gotten used to it. It doesn't bother me anymore. Barking dogs would be the least concern that I would have. I think it's imperative to keep our community safe by having a shelter that provides care for our animals. If you've ever lost an animal and you call the main shelter, it's excruciatingly painful to go down there and see all these animals. They will not tell you if their animals there or not because they could be wrong. You would have to go down there maybe numerous times to try to identify your pet. It's heartbreaking. I can't believe a city the size of Lake Forest hasn't already had a shelter. I think it's mandatory. I don't know where you want to put it. I don't have any concerns about that. Like I said, I listen to a freight train, so barking dogs are not going to intimidate me. But I think it is mandatory that we provide our own shelter for our pets and the safety of our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carlos Ray, followed by Brenda Haney.
Yes, regarding the shelter, I'm a advocate of the shelter. I'm glad the City Council has undertaken the task of trying to build this shelter. I think there's some flaws in the process. For instance, the 3 lots that you are pursuing and evaluating, they're not looking very good, are they? And the only difference between me and my wife would be that I think we should pursue other lots with less problems that I'm sure exist out there, maybe even the possibility of some of these empty buildings being retrofitted. Now we have all this empty big retail space all over the place, or commercial properties, or even industrial properties. I'm an architect, and I know this can be done, and maybe at a great cost savings in the overall, cost of the project. So all I want to say is, let's get this thing done. Let's get a little smarter about how we locate it. Why take on a huge battle with all these people here when you don't have to? All the sites are obviously seriously flawed with the land use issues. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your...
Thank you.
Brenda Haney, followed by Bob Norris.
Thank you, Carlos. And I think, by all means, I'm happy you're all here. But to clarify what was happening here, we decided we would look at animal sheltering options. And the first step in this investigation, it wasn't a proposal, it wasn't construction, it seemed to the council, well, let's look, if we're going to do it anywhere, let's look at city-owned properties first. And those were the 3 city-owned properties. So this was stage 1 in an investigation to see if there was a viable alternative. It's very obvious after reading this staff report, at least to me.
Can we go on with
that it wasn't.
Please.
No, but I just wanted to make that clear in response to what Mr. Ray had said.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you just stated, all 3 of those city-owned properties do not meet any of the requirements that are needed for an animal shelter. I live off of El Toro in Geronimo, which is the one that's proposed by the train tracks. I don't see how that property could even match whatsoever. I mean, it's right on the back of residential properties, and we'd be hearing the noise constantly, not let alone what the dogs are going to do when the fire trucks go by, because the fire station is right across the street. So, I mean, the dogs around the neighborhood already react to that. Imagine what an animal shelter would be like that. It's inconvenient also for that area to even try to find an entrance to that piece of a property. You'd have to go on the other side of the bridge to even build a street, which would cost an enormous amount. Basically, I'm happy with what the Orange County does for us. I would say that's the best interest for the city, is to remain with them. It does not cost us much extra. The enormous amount of building a place and maintaining it and having your residents pay for that is too much. So please consider the opinions of everybody tonight and stay with the county. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bob Norris, followed by Sean Chastain.
Good evening, council members. First of all, I'd like to thank some of the council members that came canvassing our areas, letting us know that this was happening in the first place. It wasn't publicly known, or I didn't know about it until some of the council members came by, taking their time on Sunday to let us know this was going to be part of the agenda. I am in favor of animal shelters, but not next to residences. I think these 3 sites are way too close to the residences, and everybody's been talking about things, so I'm not going to go into that. The shelter, like you were talking about earlier, is only 16% of our fees. If our fees are $200,000, that's only $32,000. I'd like to know what they were talking about, of building a building at $900,000, and plus the one on Authority Parcel, you're going to have to put a road in, and that's looking at about $1 million. So just from a financial standpoint, I think it would be a bad decision. Maybe I agree with him. Maybe look at other empty buildings. Maybe look at the music prison. Maybe you could have the prisoners take care of the animals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Chastain.
Great idea.
Sean Chastain, followed by Nicole Wolney.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sean Chastain, and I really have no chance to top the last remark, so I'm not even going to try. It was very well put. I also live in Lake Forest. I am a resident, and a very proud resident, I must say, of the Whistler Ridge community. I could not be more proud of seeing everyone come up and eloquently speak. They have covered many of the topics. I've honestly changed what I was going to say probably 3 or 4 times since I've gotten here. So what I want to do is move my close to the beginning, because unless the red light malfunctions, I have no chance of getting through everything I'd like to discuss. So I would like to formally request not just that the Normandale site, but all of the city-owned sites be put to a vote that they are eliminated from consideration. So the council, who I must admit has communicated very well back and forth during the process, the people that are for or against, our particular situation. You guys can use your funds, your time, without wasting them on what clearly the staff has shown that the sites only reach 2 of the criteria, and then the Normandale site only reaches 1. So clearly we need to look at something different, move to another option. So I believe you may even have a letter from Sandra Gottlieb, who sent an email this morning, the attorney that represents the Homeowners Association. She actually is requesting the same thing, that it's formally announced at this meeting that the site is no longer in consideration. You don't have to go beyond page 21 of the staff report, which states clearly that the location is deed restricted for park and recreation purposes. As the staff members just recapped, the report shows that Normandale Park only meets 1 of the 7 criteria. Most importantly, the site is not free of legal restrictions, which should eliminate that immediately, and should be no further discussions. Personally, I have 30 seconds left. Personally, I believe that the council, like I said, should vote on not considering any of these sites and focus their efforts on finding another site inside the city, maybe something outside the city, whether it's a land exchange, anything along those lines. But if you could just put the minds at ease of the residents, because I can personally say we have stressed for the last 5 days, and Thanksgiving is not a day that we should have stressed over. Even if there's a small chance, the sleep of our children, the health of our children, the calm quietness of our neighborhood, we shouldn't have had to have worried about that over Thanksgiving, and we honestly majority of the neighborhood spent Thanksgiving concerned that in the next year or 2 or further out, that we would not be able to have the Thanksgivings and the quiet and the peace. I want to again thanks. I know I'm out of time. I want to thank everyone on the council, because like I said, none of the communications ever became negative. From what I've heard, I'm just going to keep going just for one more second. From what I've heard, there have been instances where, things have gotten out of control, and everyone has been very, very professional in this whole matter, and I just ask for your consideration.
Thank you. I hate to cut off someone when they're praising us, and so thank you.
Nicole Wolney, followed by Audie Garner.
I was going to tell you to go on and on and on.
Hi there, my name's Nicole Wolney. I too am from the Whistler Ridge community, and I had this great speech prepared for you, and I don't want to beat a dead horse because I know we don't all want to be here all night. So there are 3 main points that have already been discussed, and I'd just like to reiterate them. Not only is this area not zoned correctly, I hope that it will never be rezoned, because we've paid lot premiums to live where we live. We didn't choose to live near railroad tracks and become accepting of that noise. We chose to live near green space and hope that it would always remain that way. Second, I've been told, perhaps correctly or incorrectly, that this is a no-kill outdoor shelter. At least that's what's proposed. And whether or not that starts out small with 20 dogs or so, if it's no-kill, these dogs will only die of natural causes, and more will accumulate. And at some point, we'll have hundreds of dogs that will be inevitably quite loud. There's really no way around it if they're going to be outdoors and there's no walls containing any of the noise. And especially too loud if we have homes that are only 75 feet away. I mean, it's across the street, quite literally. And lastly, we've touched on the property value, but we did contact a real estate agent who gave us an assessment of what an animal shelter would do to our area. And she said that we could possibly see a double-digit percentage drop in value. And given the value of our homes currently, that's around $70,000 on the low side. So that's a huge financial loss for many of us. It would also affect homes within a few blocks, not only because of noise, but because of reduced comps. So I guess in closing, I would like to ask that you consider all of the humans that are suffering from this. There's going to be hundreds of people affected, and I ask that you choose us, the taxpayers, over the dogs.
Thank you very much.
Audie Garner, followed by Richard Boot.
Repeat that name, please.
Audie Garner. Richard Boot, followed by Randy Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
My name is Richard Boot. I live in Lake Forest, and I live in the Whistler Ridge community. A lot of the previous speakers have covered many of the issues that I would raise as well. I first want to thank the staff for doing such an excellent job in their report. It's pretty obvious from that report that there really is no option in the city of Lake Forest, that at least among the three that have been offered in the staff report. Obviously, there are 3 or 4 issues that we've already talked about the noise, the odor, the traffic, the property values. These are all obviously negative effects on the residents of the community. And we need to avoid that, especially when we have the other options available. The Orange County option is probably cheaper, and I believe the staff will be investigating that further. It's probably a cheaper option than building a shelter in the city. And we ought to be sensitive to the costs to the residents and to the city coffers. Secondly, the deed restrictions on the Normandale parcel are the staff kind of understated in my assessment the restriction. It's simply prohibited. You can't do it, and there's going to be a lawsuit if you do. So it's not an option for the city to pursue. And I would like to follow up by reiterating what Sean suggested, which is have the city council vote tonight to eliminate the Normandale and the other parcels as an option for the proposed animal control shelter. We have many other options. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Randy Johnson, followed by Jack Harris.
Randy Johnson again from Lake Forest. I want the public to know that I submitted a correspondence to the City Council. It's a 6-page correspondence, and it'll tell you facts that the staff won't tell you about Orange County Animal Care. You need to read it. There was also one for November 3rd that I submitted. If the city won't tell you it's on record, I will. As far as Orange County Animal Care is concerned, you might ask me, Mr. Johnson, why are you so passionate about this? Because, you know, I'm a real fiscal conservative. I'm a real conservative business type person, and I hate to see pathetically incompetent and inept organizations survive and thrive. I can't stand that, and I can't stand them taking my money and you folks giving them like $1 million up front for a proposed shelter when there's no guarantees that we're going to get any better service. This is crazy. This is absolutely nuts. I've never seen something like this before. You read my correspondence here. The Laguna Hills Council lambasted your council and also staff, saying that, you know, there's complete apathy and disinterest with regard to alternatives to Orange County Animal Care. Go watch the video if you don't believe me. And it wasn't just one council person, it was 3 or 4 council people. So it's not just me saying this about the staff being lackadaisical and sitting on this and not doing anything and stalling for time while the county, okay, they're the ones that are imposing this deadline on the city of Lake Forest on April 1st. It's going to be impossible to look for alternatives now. It's too late in the game because Mr. Voits and also the staff, they were directed back on July 21st in order to look for alternatives. It took them 3 months to put a lousy meeting together with Laguna Hills. 3 months. If that isn't stalling, I don't know what is, okay? As far as the 92% is concerned, that's nuts, because either the survey is completely flawed or these people are totally ignorant about what's going on with Orange County Animal Care. All you've got to do is read the grand jury reports. All you got to do is read the performance auditor report. I showed you last week how they even get the stupid figures wrong on the compliance rates. They can't do anything right, okay? And also, I'm a dog owner. I pay my license fee. I'm a lawful dog owner. And there are only 43% of us here in Lake Forest. The cats aren't required, they're exempt from the licensing law. So I have to end up subsidizing the 56% who don't pay their fees, okay? The unlawful ones, I have to subsidize them, and I have to subsidize all the cat owners who are exempt from the licensing laws. Okay, so there's 26% or 25% of all the pet owners in Lake Forest who are subsidizing the 75% who don't pay anything.
Thank you.
It's wrong.
Thank you.
Jack Harris.
And on that 3 months delay, we contacted the city of Rancho Santa Margarita and Laguna Hills immediately after the council meeting. Laguna Hills did not have any attention to getting to us. We had to call them 4 different times to make up an appointment. Santa Margarita has no interest in doing it with Lake Forest, and so Randy Johnson, that was not on us, so thank you very much.
Jack Harris, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Good evening, City of Lake Forest.
Good evening.
I've been a resident and homeowner in Lake Forest since 1987 for the last 12 and a half years in Lyons Parkside. I'm a responsible dog owner. I have 2 dogs currently. One is a rescue that we're fostering, and I believe, it's a possibility that a shelter has a place in our community, but just not in the proposed sites in the residential area. I feel for the people in Whistler Ridge because they have valid points. I bought my house, which backs up to Regency for the view of Saddleback Mountain, and I knew I had some road noise there, but I wouldn't be counting on having a shelter there and having barking dogs 24/7. A shelter, I believe, belongs in an industrial area far enough away from a residential neighborhood that it's not an 8 to 5 business. The dogs don't know that. They're not going to quit barking at 5 o'clock, and it's going to go on and on. I'd like to be out in my backyard, like the people at Whistler Ridge, and be able to enjoy a quiet evening outside or an afternoon and not have to listen to dogs bark. It's undue stress on the dogs we have. Currently we can hear coyotes that are down in that area, and also dogs that are in Normandale down the street, probably a quarter of a mile away because of the way the sound travels. And so I really oppose the 3 locations that are proposed. And I also work from home about 50% of the time, and our master bedroom and everything is on the back side of the house. And so I don't know how we would even sleep with the windows open at night in the summertime with dogs barking 24/7. So, I kind of agree with what other people said about opposing the sites in Normandale in particular. And maybe there is a building or 2 in Lake Forest that could be improved and made into a shelter that is not going to bother any residents. That's all I have, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Heiko Peschel, followed by Andrea Butts.
Okay, I'm back, and I'm not going to be a good guy anymore. Heiko Peschel, Foothill Ranch. First of all, for my esteemed NIMBY friends in Whistler Ridge who paid too much for low-rent housing surrounded by businesses and apartments on the hope that what they had across the street, which has been there for a lot longer than they have, we used to run through there. 40 years ago, I was a marathoner. We ran from uptown Irvine to downtown El Toro and back. So we had it when they weren't there, and we enjoyed it. So, that much for them. Comment about Orange County Animal Control. We had a deer killed, probably by a mountain lion, about 50 feet from the next door neighbor's house. I called Orange County Animal Control. Well, in a couple, 3 days, we might be able to come out and get the carcass. So I called Lisa Bartlett's office. They came that afternoon. That's how good she is in taking care of her constituents. Options, county or own, if we're going to do it, put it in a nursery right up the street here, or in the county maintenance yard on the other side of El Toro and Portola, next to Saddleback Church. Those guys are only there on Sundays. They probably wouldn't miss it the other 6 days. Personal opinion, the county is the best way to go, as much as I don't like some of the things they're doing. You guys have to understand that the county animal shelter and the little low-density prison right next to it have been there for about 50, 60 years, and they're getting old. They need to be replaced. We understand that. Again, locations, you got that. Insofar as subsidizing, I'm subsidizing a school district. We don't have any children. And I'm subsidizing all the pet owners because we don't have any pets. The ones we have, we feed, and then they go home at night. That's the birds, that is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea Butts, followed by Jim Brown.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Butts. I am one of the few people here who are from the Authority complex. I can honestly say if we built something there, you would be in my backyard. I am the last house right next to the apartment complex. In the corner of my backyard on the city side is the major utility lines that run down our fence. 10 feet behind our house, which also hasn't been mentioned, is the great big huge underground gas line. That's the same type of line that blew up in San Bruno that has specific restrictions on what can be put on that property, how much the easement is that runs there, and any type of building that goes in this complex has to allow for access to that line, really has to allow for access to that line, because I certainly don't want to see it blow up because it can't be maintained anymore. Really would affect me very personally. On the flip, I'm a dog owner. He is a rescue dog. He was a senior rescue dog. We have 2 cats who are rescue cats. Every pet we've had have ever come from rescue societies or from shelters, and the Orange County Animal Shelter is a absolute abomination, and I'm embarrassed to say our city spends money supporting it. If we can't build our own shelter in a better place, please absolutely start holding the county accountable for what they're doing with our dollars. The more we let the county continue the shelter as is, we are just as guilty as them of being cruel to animals, and we should be ashamed of ourselves for that. I just really think that all 3 properties discussed tonight need to absolutely be voted against. They're not really going to work. Again, taking the whole gas line away, there's less than 1,000 feet between my house and the railroad. So if you're trying to put the animal shelter at over 750 feet from my house, you're not going to have very much space to build. So with that, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Jim Brown, followed by Michael Gaddy. Jim Brown.
Next.
Michael Gaddy.
Ms. Smith, how many more do we have? Just so that
Mr. Gaddy is the last speaker.
Okay, great.
I'm Michael Gaddy, and I live in Lyon Parkside. So looking at the staff study, in Irvine and Mission Viejo, the shelters are in commercial areas.
Yes.
In Irvine was a high-density area, which is apartments. In Mission Viejo, they said there were apartments 1,900 feet away and 1,700 feet away. And you guys are proposing or considering putting one in Normandale Park, which is right across the street from $1 million homes, which is crazy. The average rental period in an apartment in Southern California is less than 8 months. These are homes that we've purchased, that we chose to spend our lives at, and you want to put a dog shelter right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, I don't even see why you're considering it. Especially since the zoning specifically excludes that use, and there's a deed restriction on the property also. I would also request, like others have, that tonight you remove the Normandale Park from consideration. I don't know that much about the other two sites. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
We've had no further requests.
Well, we're bringing it back to council, but I actually, before we go any further, I think that I've heard you all, and I'm going to make a motion that we just table these residential neighboring sites from the El Toro land, or Lake Forest landmass. Can we do that?
I would, if we say table, I would rather use the word eliminate.
Yeah, we'll take off for consideration. Yeah, I would like to have it just vote of the council, if I can get a second.
I second that. However, I would like the record to show that I'm seconding, not tabling, I'm seconding totally eliminating these three sites from further consideration.
I want to say thank you all for coming, and we have heard you, and I want to say that we very much value the opinions of our residents, and you guys were a very good audience, and I'll just comment.
Discussion, yeah. So there were a few questions just to start with that people had from the audience, and I just want to make sure some of those are addressed. First of all, we did bring this up in July. As the mayor said, we attempted to work with Rancho Santa Margarita, San Juan Capistrano,
And
Laguna Hills to try to see what we might be able to do. Very little interest. And if Laguna Hills did lambast us, I mean, I don't want to start a little city war here between ourselves, but that's really disappointing because, you know, it's one of their council members came to our meeting, one of our council members went to their meeting. We were trying to work in good faith. You know, it takes a majority of a council to actually move forward with some things, and so that might have been some of the challenge there. But, you know, I do feel like that we operated in good faith. We've been trying to find a site. One of our colleagues here, this has been an issue for him for probably a decade. I don't know, maybe longer, but you know, something he's been focused on. And I think what we're seeing tonight is that we just don't have a location in town. At our November 3rd meeting, I asked my colleague, Councilman Gardner, I said, give me all the sites that you can think of. And these three were the three that he came up with. There was a fourth one that was proposed that Councilman Nick rightfully said that one definitely wouldn't work. None of these really worked. But my specific request to the staff was that they provide information regarding the encumbrances, regarding the legal challenges that we were going to have with each site. This is probably one of the most detailed reports that I've seen from the staff the entire time I've been on the council. I was incredibly impressed with the report that I received. They did everything that I asked. They have all year long, and you know, the outcome is very clear. It's been crystal clear the entire time. But we had to go through this exercise because, again, this is something that's been talked about for a long time. So we need to see, are there sites that are available that we can work from? We asked for those sites. Those sites have come back. It just looks like there's just no possibility at all, aside from the community response, which has been significant, and I appreciate you all coming out. The legal challenges that we'd have as well. There's just way too many problems with this. So with that said, I'm very supportive of the motion, and you know, I just want to say, again, I appreciate the community coming out. One of the commenters mentioned that some council members were out in neighborhoods, and I wasn't trying to be an advocate one way or another. Some of you probably received a sheet of paper. I was mainly just in the Authority Parcel site, but I said, if you support or oppose, I want you to come. I really encourage everybody that's here to become active in your government. Let us know how you feel about issues. I'm really excited that you're here tonight. I hope that when other issues do pop up, that you'll come and voice your opinion. Whether you support the position that I hold or you oppose it, this is what city government, local government should be about. You'll see me in your grocery store. You'll see me around town. You'll see all of us. And that's the great thing about local government. And, you know, your voice is heard. It was heard crystal clear tonight, and I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you all being here.
Mayor Voights, if I may, real quickly. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I echo very briefly and quickly. I want to do this because I want you to go home. It's been a long day for you. I know that. I echo what my dear colleague, Councilor Robinson, said moments ago. I too appreciate every single one of you being here. I, for one, apologize for the anxiety that was created and you suffered because of it, especially over this past holiday weekend. I don't know how else we could have gone about this because of the state law. We cannot do things in closed doors and just and take a vote on the result. So you have to be involved. I mean, you can choose not to be involved, but you really should be, and you have to be involved. By state law, we have to do this in front of you. So we had to actually agendize this, talk about it, and then realize as a community that the three sites are just not proper. We couldn't have reached that decision in private as much as I regret having produced anxiety for you and your loved ones. We do have a motion, thanks to Mayor Voights. I did second it. These three sites are permanently removed from consideration. Once again, I thank each and every one of you, Andrew, Donnie, Carlos, who had a great idea about retrofitting. It could very well be the solution, retrofitting some building in the middle of some industrial park, quite away from residential units. Thomas had a great idea. All of you, thank you so much.
So again, to reiterate, the staff me and the city manager met with the city of Laguna Hills. We made the appeal to join with us Rancho Santa Margarita, and both had go in other directions. And the meeting at the Laguna Hills City Council meeting with me and city manager was their hopes was that they were going to get the council to go with Orange County Animal Shelter. So, what's before us right now on this vote is to take these parcels that are city-owned, that are residentially neighbored, off the table forever. So, thank you all for coming tonight, and I'll just call the vote now. Cast your votes, please. You may.
So I too wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know I received at least 12 emails, tried to respond right away. Really appreciated everyone's input tonight. I mean, it was amazing. The public speakers were very courteous and respectful. The time allotted, there might have been a couple, but Heiko is a great guy, so we'll give him. In your neighborhood is a great neighborhood, so maybe we can come to an agreement there, right, Heiko? You're a great guy. So, any case, I kind of disagree a little bit with what Councilman Nick stated. In my philosophy on government is that the City Council provides the direction and provides the policy, but the staff are the ones that kind of do the work. And so what kind of happened was that the City Council decided, hey, we're going to, or there were some members of the City Council who decided, hey, let's choose these locations before really knowing and having the research. And so I think that's what caused tonight the angst that you experienced over the weekend. I think if we allow staff to make that evaluation and only bring back or in a report say, hey, this is an impossible site, I think we should stay out of, the City Council should stay out of trying to select certain locations and allow the staff to do the detailed work, and we stay at the policy level. That would alleviate, I think, a lot of the angst that the staff had experienced. That the residents had experienced. So I think that's something that staff should do. And I'm very supportive of this agenda item, and I think that just a question. I think we still want to continue discussing this because I think we have to give staff direction on what to do over the next 6 months. So after the vote, I think I'm Mr. City Attorney, I think we're going to still stay on this agenda item, right?
Mr. Mayor, Council, that is Council's prerogative, but the vote on this motion would not end this discussion if Council wanted to proceed with further discussions.
Okay.
Okay. Does that need to be part of the motion?
No. Okay. Well, then we'll call a vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations, guys. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Happy holidays to you all and a Happy New Year. Thank you. So if you please could come back, we'll reconvene this meeting. Waiting for Andrew Hamilton. Oh, there he is. Okay, brings us back to item number.
Continuing.
On item 8. There was a lot of discussion tonight about all the various options that we have, the 5 options that we have, and even one of my colleagues mentioned that, Irvine and Mission Viejo don't look like they make sense. I think Councilman Gardner mentioned that. I know that when former Councilwoman Sharon Cody was here back in the summer, she mentioned that Mission Viejo wouldn't be interested in providing the service. So I don't see that as being an option. Frankly, I think that regardless of where we try to put something in the city, we're not going to have the distance that we need. We're going to be back here dealing with this issue no matter what. So, in my opinion, and I've kind of been here for a while, but been trying to be as open-minded as I possibly can, I think that our option that we need to go with is with the Orange County Animal Shelter. And I think it was Andrea Butts. She was the third to last speaker, or second to last, something like that. And she lived on next to the Authority property. I don't think she's still here, but she mentioned the gas lines, mentioned that she had a rescue dog and 2 rescue cats, and she said we need to hold the county accountable. Now, there's the physical building issue that we can talk about there, and one of the members of the public doesn't believe it's ever going to get built. He comes and rants and raves about it all the time. I think this Board of Supervisors recognizes how important of an issue it is that a new shelter is built. Some of the challenges have been dealing with the closure of the Tustin military base, and that's been causing some of the delays. The staff has presented to us at the November 3rd meeting that there's been some land shifting that's gone on, and that's what is moving this date up to the 2017, I think it's September 2017 opening. So I really believe that the structure issues are going to be dealt with in this new building. I know some of the concerns in the past have been everything from, I want to call them like urine canals, I think maybe Dr. Gardner had mentioned in the past. It's a really old shelter. It's decades and decades old. I know that how you build those has changed significantly. My expectation would be that's going to change. The hosing off of animals and leaving them in their cages, I would hope that in a new facility we don't have that problem. I want to make sure that we stay on top of that, and as Ms. Butts said, that we hold the county accountable to things like that. That was the reason why Newport Beach, in that November 25th article in the Register, said that they were going to leave the Orange County Humane Society, because that's how they were treating the animals there, and they were leaving them wet for, the article said, I think, 2 or 3 days. So we need to make sure that we hold them accountable. And Mr. Peschel mentioned, not pointing you out in any bad way, but he made a very good point. And this is the unfortunate reality that sometimes occurs, and it's hard to respond to everything in the perfect way. But he mentioned that there was a deer carcass out there, and he called, and the response was in 2 or 3 days. Then he calls our county supervisor, our elected representative, and the problem's dealt with immediately. In holding all agencies, all the bureaucracy accountable, we want to try to make sure that it doesn't take a county supervisor to make something like that happen. It's a part of a standard operating procedure for an agency. it's heartwarming to know that we have elected officials that can make that happen. It's disappointing to know that you have to make that call. And so that's what I want to try to make sure that we continue to do. And at the staff level here, that we're doing our best to try to hold the county accountable for the services that they're providing. We're spending a lot of money. I believe that if we tried to do it on our own, and a few public commenters mentioned it, we would spend a lot more. In the report, it mentions that there's about 1,500 and some odd days of sheltering that occur here. And I know Dr. Gardner probably has a few comments about why that occurs. It could be longer if they had a different, if it was a no-kill facility, and there really aren't any zero-kill facilities. There's just less kill facilities. But you look at that 1,500 days, and on average we're talking about 4.5 pets from Lake Forest that are at a shelter on any given day. You just take the 1,500 and some odd divided by the 365, and that's what you get. Okay, so we don't have a huge population there. It could definitely grow at different times of the year, and I'm sure there's some seasonality to it and things like that, but we just want to make sure that for the money that we're spending, that we're holding the county accountable to make sure that the services that they should be providing are being provided, and it doesn't take calling an elected official to make something happen the way it should the first time. So that's the first part of this. I know the second part is that they're talking about putting together a committee that includes activists. I want to make sure that there's a Lake Forest activist, even if that happens to be one of my colleagues who's a big advocate of this. But if it's not him, that it's a resident in town who has that opportunity to really tell the county what they expect. I think that's important. So that's a couple parts here. So I want to make a motion that we direct staff to work with the county with that April 1st date, and that we have a specific focus on holding them accountable. I think that in whatever they expect from us, I don't know if it's a letter of involvement, I'm not really sure what the terminology is, but I want to make it really clear that we expect that in this new shelter there's going to be a higher level of accountability for the services that they're providing, and that we have a representative from at least somewhere in the city who can share our thoughts. I think that's really important, and so that's my motion at this point.
Well, I'll second that. And I'd like to say that, Orange County Animal Shelter is a 40-year-old building, and it's 70 years old? Is it? It's
World War II.
Yeah, it was built in the 40s.
1941.
And the grand jury report opened all of the county's eyes to some of the problems and the mistreatment of the animals there, and the shortfalls of staff. I think that their effort and their compromises to us in writing in their report is well documented. It's a matter of, as Councilman Robinson says, keeping them accountable to the people of Orange County. And I think that the eyes of so many of our cities and our citizens and dog and animal lovers have been opened because of this old facility and some of the ways they were managing the care of those animals. I think that it's my hope, and that's all it is right now, but it is hope, and hope eternal grows eternal with me, and I am hopeful that the new facility will be the state-of-the-art facility that they brag that it's going to be, and that they will listen to the people that come in and volunteer and help, and those that are trying to find homes for these animals that are lost, and be more accountable to us as residents and animal lovers. So I second that motion.
I just want to say something about that. I'm going to be supportive of this motion. To add I don't know if it would be an amendment to the motion. I'll let staff kind of decide that. But I would like to see negotiating service levels. So, negotiating of service levels. So, we have in there that there's maybe a 12-hour response for dead animals, and there's a 24-hour response for a service number 2, and 46-hour, 48-hour. I don't know if that would, if you think that that is something to put into the motion. If I think maybe Councilman Robinson's motion probably includes that intent, and I think getting something around like the actual service levels. I also have a question for staff. Is that one of the speakers talked about cats, and I think Dr. Gardner might know this, but are other cities? Are there any other entities that are charging licenses for cats?
Some places it's unusual. Some places they do it and they make a lot of money, but it's not normally done.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to pose the motion for so many reasons that we don't have enough time to sit here tonight and me to list them all. But let me go through just a few examples. The grand jury criticized the Orange County shelter because of their poor management. And each time I want you to say, well, how is a new shelter going to give us better management? They criticized them for their bad leadership. Steve Franks apologized to us here for his poor leadership. He was right, partially right. And the new shelter isn't going to give us new leadership. They have manpower problems and understaffing problems. So new shelter is not going to solve that problem. They have the problem that no other county our size in the United States has a single shelter. Therefore, it's impossible to provide good service over 1,000 square miles. Is a new shelter in Tustin going to make any difference in providing better service than a new shelter in Orange? Of course not. Is a new shelter that serves 30,000 animals a year going to kill fewer than 40% of them? Of course not. As a matter of fact, as you go up and up and up in the numbers of admissions you have per year, the euthanasia rate goes up. I've recently shown that in California, and other people throughout the country have shown that time and time again. I did that study 5 years ago, and that's what that study showed. If you have less than 1,000 people, like Irvine, Irvine and Mission Viejo both have about 6%, which is excellent, because generally speaking, to get 6%, you have to have less than 1,000. You go from 1,000 to 2,000, you go up to about 10%, up to 13%, 23%, 40%. And that's what we have. Having a single shelter a new shelter is not going to change that.
What's your 1,000 to 2,000?
If you go, yeah. All right. If you have between 0 and 1,000 animals per year as admissions, your average euthanasia rate is 7% for those facilities that do that. If you admit from 1,000 to 2,000, the average euthanasia rate goes to 10%. If you go from 2,000 to 5,000 per year, the average euthanasia rate goes to 17%. If you go from 5,000 to 10,000, you get your numbers, guy. You got to get this.
I wasn't sure, because we had talked about 1,000 days.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no,
I didn't know what the unit
animals admitted per year.
Okay.
So having a single monolithic shelter, as they propose to do, will give us that same 30,000 a year, which will give us the same kill rate we have now, 40%. So although there are some minor things that will be corrected by a new shelter, it won't be so horrible, the cages won't be so horrible, that one particular element, the concentration camp-like environment in which these animals are forced to live, well, fortunately they kill enough of them so quickly that they don't have to live under those conditions so long. But for those who do live there, that is the one improvement that will be made. They'll live for that extra week in a little better environment. But they'll still be killed, they'll still have poor management, they'll still have a high kill rate, they'll still have manpower problems. And now catch this, which may be worst of all, those of you who believe that the county is going to a new shelter is somehow going to change things. There was a woman here a few weeks ago, Sharon Logan, who I met again last night. I met with the Board of Supervisors, Lisa Bartlett's people, about the animal shelter. at the county level. And she had sued the county because they violated the euthanasia practices. They were doing terrible things, violating their own codes. And she sued them, and she won. They made an agreement with her. She didn't take any money this time at all. She was very kind about that. She just wanted it to be better. So they set up new policies. They set up new things. And within a month, they've already violated it. Within the first month when she was here, they had already violated it once. I found out last night that, in fact, they have documented evidence that they violated it twice, and her lawyer's waiting for the fourth time to come back with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the county. So the county, having promised, having agreed, knowing that they are, violating their own law, caught, admitted it, signed a thing, violated it twice in the last 2 months. She had a videotape. I didn't get a chance to view it, but I'm prepared to believe her. So the point is, the new shelter solves none of the major problems we're confronted with. Okay. On the other hand, let's look at the other side of the coin. What do we have? We did a conscientious, good job. Made it pretty clear that we don't have our own land. Because we don't have our own land, that gives us two options. Option number one is buy land. And then the costs go up enormously. We probably can't afford it. So that gives us a second option. Second option is to go to the new models. And the new models are really not to have that monolithic shelter at all, not even to have the shelter, but to go into the retail environment and operate your shelter out of local retail environments. Operate them in conjunction with local vets. So there is a new model that has been getting some success in some places. It's probably not an easy model to implement. Quite frankly, I have no idea whether or not it would be successful here. But it seems to me, since we have until April Fool's Day of 2016 in order to pay the ransom to the county, that we should at least give it one last try and see whether or not these newer models would work here in the city. Now, what's the advantages of these newer models? If we could find a space, etc. For one thing is, we may have to pay close to $1 million, $925,000, to an agency that we know is already bankrupt and does a terrible job. Having paid $950,000 to these guys, then we're there for life. There's nothing they could do and nothing they could violate that we would say anything about, because we're $950 into the hole with them. So before we're going to spend $950,000, it seems to me we should investigate that one last model. Now, what are the advantages of that model? One of the advantages of that model, when they do it, is it's located, and we'd probably have 4 or 5 of them located all over the city. It's located in easily accessible areas where the adoption rates are very high because people are going to Nice and Easy. Could I take a couple extra minutes here and give you some extra information? So would that be okay?
A few more minutes.
You're the chief. Okay, thank you. 5 years ago, I actually proposed this model to Orange County Animal Care. We were going to do it for Lake Forest. We were going to do it for the 20 animals, 20 dogs, or 20 animals a month that came in, 20 dogs to the city. And we had a spot picked out right next to Nice and Easy. And Ryan Drabeck was the shelter director then, and we did the numbers. We had that all set to go. We were going to run a negative about $1,500 to $1,700 a month. And the reason we were going to run the negative was because the Orange County Shelter was going to charge us for the animals. Every animal they gave us, they were going to charge us for. I said, give me a break. I'm going to save the lives of animals. Why would you charge me for the animals? Why not just give them to me for free anyhow?
Was that $1,700?
Yeah, $1,700 a month negative we would have run. And a lot of that was the fees from Orange County. Anyway, he wouldn't do it. Well, not he wouldn't do it, but the powers that be wouldn't do it. And since that time, the Orange County Shelter has revived that model, and in fact, they're going to do something not unlike that in Laguna Hills. Only it's going to be just the adoption part of it, not the shelter part of it. So there is another model out there. What advantages would it have? One, higher adoptability. The second advantage it would have is it would be located in areas where people aren't going to be upset as these people were. So that's another big advantage. Its biggest advantage is it would put us in control of the collection. Randy Johnson obviously is taken off, but he showed us months ago that we only collect 43% of our revenue. There's another 57% of the revenue left on the table. If we collected that other 57%, in fact, we'd be making a profit on that. That would wipe out all of our costs. So having the volunteers there, having the local control, having the ability to get the licensing, et cetera, would increase our revenues enormously, would decrease our costs, et cetera. So I'm not opposed. Ultimately, if we fail, as we failed in this first step, if we fail in the second step, it's kind of like we'll have no choice. But I'd rather take this one last effort and try to explore this new model and see whether or not that would work. And we've got 5 more months before we, have to.
So you want to go ahead and make that into a motion?
Yes, I would.
Please.
So my motion would be that we ask the staff to explore the possibilities. Oh, and the other advantage would, for Lake Forest only, of a retail model sheltering care service. And come back to us, let's say, by February the 1st. Because then it gives us enough time if we want to pursue it and to say, oh, we forgot this, but if not, then it's April the 1st. So let's not shoot that gun yet. Let's give this one last try. That's my motion.
All right. I second that motion.
Just a point of discussion. Couldn't like the volunteers we could still have volunteers here in the city. I mean, I'm not sure if I understand that in how, we could still do volunteers either way we go, with the county or with here.
Yeah, here's the problem, and it was very clear last night when I was at this meeting at the supervisor's office. There was a woman who had done an analysis of, this was just the most remarkable study I ever saw. She took all of the animal control documents and she analyzed them into what kind of categories they were. Of course, the major one was financial, and you can imagine that. But going down the line, there wasn't a single document about how you care for the animals or how you enrich the cages or how you market the animals, but there were books and books and pages on how you kill the animals. You should only kill this many on a given table, you should only, et cetera, et cetera. The Orange County Animal Shelter is in the business of killing animals. They're not in the business of caring for animals. That's their main business. You saw that very clearly last night. I saw that from their documents. Now, God bless the people who volunteer there. But can you imagine somebody from Lake Forest driving an hour into Orange, where 40% of the animals they're going to come in contact with are going to be killed within a couple of days. Some of them, against the law, are going to be killed the same day they come in. Almost impossible to keep volunteers under that basis. Whereas Mission Viejo, they got volunteers out of the yin-yang. Let's come down, let's play with them. So here's the critical difference. That's why.
Well, and I guess we're having a discussion on your motion, but, I think I don't have the PowerPoint, but what was it, 16% of the cost, or was was the sheltering portion? So
Yes, 16% of our total cost is for animal sheltering.
So I know you're talking about the sheltering, but that's only 16% of it. So, I would just encourage people to volunteer to, I do volunteering for the issue that the issues that I'm passionate about, and volunteering, but there's still another 84% that we have to find. I don't know if that model. I'd really encourage you to be the shelter CEO. I don't know. I'm not trying to be funny there. That's really something that you're passionate about, and as much. I don't know if Supervisor Bartlett would make you the shelter. I don't know what the title would be, but you could be like the liaison to the staff.
There are people more knowledgeable than me and more active than me involved. None of that makes a difference. It's the county, it's the government. It's not, government. I mean, it's not for lack of input. I've been up there many times to many of them. So it just seems to me, we have until April the 1st to make that decision. We've got 5 months. There are other models that we didn't explore. That's the next step to take if we're really going to do our due diligence on behalf of the citizens. We're not doing this for the dogs and the cats. Was there one woman out here last night that talked about going up and having to get her cat or whatever it is? We're doing it for ourselves so that when our animals are picked up, they're treated humanely. We don't have to drive an hour into Orange and find out that our cat or dog's already been killed. This is something we're doing for our residents, and we have 5 more months. Why not take that last one more step to see whether or not a model which we didn't consider now works? This was always the preliminary step to take a look. We look. We can't put it on any city-owned properties. Okay, what can we do? We can. Irvine and Mission Viejo won't take us, so that one's out. But there is one more option we haven't explored. That's all I'm asking.
And at that November 3rd meeting, I was pretty clear on my position, and I said, give us all of the locations so that we can look at them, and if we can't find one, then we're going to have to go with the county. So that's why I don't feel like I've deviated from my position there. I am incredibly focused on the accountability side, and I want to, I'm not trying to be argumentative, I just want to, I do take issue with some of it, though, here. When a Lake Forest resident goes to the Orange County Animal Shelter, are they just adopting Lake Forest dogs and cats?
No.
They're from everywhere, right? So those are becoming our new Lake Forest residents, those dogs and cats that are being adopted. If you walk away from the Orange County Animal Shelter, you lose your voice. Whether you like it or not, you lose your voice. So the Orange County Animal Shelter is going to argue with your 40%, but let's just take your 40% and work from that. If your voice isn't there anymore, if the activists in Lake Forest aren't there, what we do is we remove our 4.5 pets per day that come to our shelter, and then we ignore all the rest because you don't have a voice anymore. They're not going to listen to you. You've got your own shelter. Deal with that, right? There's so much low-hanging fruit in that 40%. I say stay and fight. That's what you should do. That's what we should do, is explain to the county how important this is. And if it's really 40%, if you take 40% down to 38, it's still a high number, right? But 2% out of 30,000, using the numbers that you provided, you just saved 600 animals, right? That's more than you would save if you just brought all the animals to Lake Forest. So stay and fight. I think that's what we should do. We should hold them accountable and say, look, we don't even have that many animals there. The vast majority are coming from Anaheim and some of these big cities out there that probably should have their own, but they don't, right? So we should stay and fight. You mentioned the powers that be wouldn't let you do what you wanted to do years ago, 5 years ago. There's new powers that be at this point. They seem a little bit more receptive. And when Mr. Frank showed up, he was taking full responsibility, and you said, it's not your fault. He said, hey, I'm the top of the totem pole here for the most part. So
only his fault.
Yeah, and so there's new powers that be. And if we stay and fight, we make sure that the County Board of Supervisors understands how critical of an issue this is. You'll have a voice with Lisa Bartlett. We'll all have a voice with Lisa Bartlett. Heiko Peschel has a voice with Lisa Bartlett. He calls and says jump, and she says how high. That's what it sounds like to me. Okay? When we look at the revenue side, and I just want to get into that a little bit, because that's how I stand on the shelter part. But when we get into the revenue side, I run a small business myself. I can tell you, if I have a $25 outstanding charge or an $85 outstanding charge, it's going to cost me more to try to collect that amount than the actual money. So part of the problem in all of this is that, yes, those who are voluntarily great citizens, they show up to council meetings, they participate in their city, they get a bill for their pet, or they register their pet, they get a bill, they pay it. Those are the easy, low-hanging fruit. You try to collect from that other 56%, and that's not revenue that we would get if we tried to do this in-house here somehow. We would spend more money trying to collect that 56%, and I don't know the numbers, so I don't want to make too much of a definitive statement, but I'm just going to say it would cost a lot to collect from that 56% than we would actually get. I don't know how much, but, I mean, if we're talking about, you know, our expenditures, roughly a couple $100,000, let's just say it's half, right? Our general fund expenditure, let's say it's about half. I forget all the numbers, but it was something like that. Actually, the registration fees were like $375 or something, if I'm not so. But let's just take that number. If we were to get that, how many people would we have to hire? How would we have to make that happen to go track down the people who aren't registering? And I just don't think there's a whole lot of revenue there. So I think that's kind of a misnomer for us to even look at. The last thing, and again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but
you're succeeding.
I know it probably seems that way, but that's not really the intent. I just want to try to explain my position here. You know, the books and pages about killing versus the books and pages about procedures. In my own business, how I operate the business, I want to be as simplistic as possible. I want people to be able to know it. If it's books and pages about how to operate my business, it's going to be impossible for anybody to know that. I want it to be as simplistic as possible. Now, when I get into contracts, gosh, they're like as complex as possible. I can't understand them half the time when I have attorneys putting them together for me. The kill part to this is so litigious. And we know that. I mean, you've mentioned that, you know, Sharon Logan is suing yet again. Yep. So because of that, they have to have incredibly detailed processes and procedures for that, because otherwise they open themselves up to huge amounts of litigation. Now, it sounds like they're not complying with that, you know, based on your information. That's something they need to work on. And when they have books and pages of it and they don't comply, then I would guess that the chances of winning in court now start going up. So that's why they keep adding more pages to it. And they're probably, again, making it way too complex, but they're trying to avoid litigation. So, you know, again, my main point in all this, I just wanted to address some of those points, but my main point is, let's stay and fight. Let's not walk away, because we're just a tiny little bit to this, but we can have a big voice. A council member is a council member, whether you're from Anaheim or you're from Lake Forest. I mean, one of the speakers mentioned, you know, I got elected to the AQMD board. I beat the mayor of Santa Ana for that position. The population of his town is significantly bigger, but I can have a big voice for all of Orange County.
Because he's been there for what, 20 years?
Yeah, something like that. So we can have a voice, so let's use it. Let's not just walk away and say, we're going to take care of our few, and then there might not even be enough pets for Lake Forest residents that really want to adopt them. If we're only talking about an average of 4.5 a day and it's, you know, 300 a year or whatever, it's possible that we adopt more than we actually put in there. So why would we want to just, like, you know, people go to a few locations and they're like, oh, there's only one dog now. Because if we only have a handful and we've got this model of a few around the city, they might only have one dog and one cat. And they're like, you know, my daughter says, Daddy, I want a white one. That one's a brown one, right? And so the adoption doesn't even happen that day. You know, so again, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, if we stay and fight, I think we can have a bigger impact. So that's why I'm not supportive of the motion, but I can appreciate where you're coming from.
I believe we can do both. I believe we can take care of the residents of Lake Forest and save the animals here. And I believe I and anybody else who wants to join me can continue the fight with the county. Those aren't mutually exclusive.
Andrew Hamilton.
And, you know, I agree. I want to echo both your comments, just that recent one there, and Dwight's comment. I think the way to beat this is a volunteer group. So if the county allows volunteers to go canvass for the unreported dogs that are not registered, I think we should try and solicit volunteers to do that. I think one thing about staying with the county, too, is that, you know, we're on the ground level here, the ground floor, and we could ask them, hey, we'd like to try a pilot program with some of the options that you're talking about. If we could do, you know, we could ask the county to have a retail location, you know, like you're saying. And I think that could be something that we're with the county, and they say we could try and negotiate with, still stay with the county, keep them accountable, but say, hey, we'd like to try a pilot program with you and utilize some of these options that you're thinking about.
The county for 40 years has been promising a new shelter. For 15 years, they've received grand jury reports equally as dismal as the ones that they just have, and now in 2015. At some point, you know, you just have to assume that this isn't going to happen, and that we either continue with that and endorse that kind of terrible conditions or for our own residents, or we at least make an attempt to do something better for our own citizens.
Yeah, but
maybe they don't come up with anything. It seems to me we should at least try.
I know what you're saying, but just briefly, I grew up in Ohio, and when I was a kid, Ohio State Buckeyes football was horrendous. They always lost, and I felt so despondent. I just completely stopped watching. You might know about Ohio State in that. Well, no, it was
when I was at Ohio State, we won every game 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
So,
however, when I was
3 yards,
and so I completely gave up on them. But as soon as Jim Tressel came in 2000, 1999, he started winning, and so I think there is hope. I think we shouldn't shut the door. And with a new administration, with new supervisors, I'm hopeful that this thing does turn around. I believe in hope.
The new supervisor for the shelter, Dr. Hawkins, she falsifies the data on euthanasia. I've called her on it, and I have actually produced the documentation to show that she uses, she includes in her euthanasia data as the dead animals who show up at the shelter are considered admissions. There's no other shelter. Well, I only know about 50 or 60 shelters, so I don't know every shelter. But of the 60 or so shelters I know and I've ever heard of, no shelter ever counts the dead animals as admissions. Because she counts the dead animals as admissions, something they only started 3 years ago, it looks like the kill rate is much less than it is, because look at how many we admit. The 30,000 they admit, of them, about 5,000 are dead. But they say we admitted 30,000, and therefore our euthanasia rate. That's the new leader of the Orange County shelter. The compliance rate, as Mr. Johnson showed us, they lie about the compliance rate. They claim it's 50-something%, it's only 43%. These are the people you're talking about, who've promised for 40 years. And at least in Ohio State, when I was there, we were the champions. And then they came back, and then they'll go down and they'll come back. These people have been providing horrendous care for 70 years in a row. And you want to stick with that team without trying one last attempt to find an alternative model.
Okay, I'm confused by that fact. So if 5,000 of them come in and they're considered admitted and they've died, then what does that mean? So they're never euthanized? Right. So they just constantly stay admitted? Or do they say they've been adopted out? No,
they created 3 years ago a category called like DOA, dead on admission. That's not exactly the category. But by doing that, that adds to their numbers. So if you were killing 10 out of 25,000, right? Then you were killing a quarter, something like that. But now they raised the numbers of admissions, so it looks like the numbers being killed are a smaller percentage of the total that are in there. They're on the books. If you go up to the website and you look, you'll see under the admissions that very funny category. It's not quite called dead on arrival, but these are not the dead ones they pick up in the field services. These are ones who people bring in a dead animal, again, we're talking about terrible stuff. Or animals that died, when they picked them up, they were alive, but by the time they got there, they died. Because if somebody picks up an animal here in Lake Forest, that animal's going to ride around in the cab for 8 hours before he's delivered back to Orange. They don't pop back to Orange. So that 5,000 is made up of dead animals that arrived there and animals who were picked up alive and brought dead.
What does Supervisor Bartlett say about that?
She says this concerns me. I'm going to look at it. That's what she said in early September, right? As did your good buddy Spitzer, Supervisor Spitzer. Said, we're very upset by this. We're going to look into it. That was early September. This is early December. I haven't heard back.
Maybe we should sick Heiko at him.
Well, Supervisor Spitzer did save the wolf dog.
So,
No.
So there was a motion and then a substitute motion. So I'll call the vote on the substitute motion.
Substitute motion being to go back in one last try.
Cast your votes.
That motion fails with Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton, Mayor Voights, and Councilmember Robinson opposed.
That brings us to Councilman Robinson's motion.
It's just a kind of point of discussion. I think let's stay and fight. Let's see if we can get that retail that Jim Gardner said. I don't know if you want to amend your motion to attempt having a pilot program, but I think if he's got good ideas, we should try to get him.
I don't want to amend the motion, but I don't think there's a problem with that. I'd just like to get more information. Other than just the little bit we're getting tonight, it wasn't in any of the staff reports. I don't have any information. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it, but I don't want to amend my motion at this point. It sounds like what you're suggesting is something that we could do at any point in the future. So, I don't want to include it in the motion right now.
Yeah,
but I'm open to definitely discussing that at a later date.
So with that, cast your vote, please.
That motion passes with Councilmember Gardner opposed.
That brings us
Agenda Item 9, 2016 Legislative Platform submitted by City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff has provided you with a recommendation relative to your legislative platform. It's been rearranged, but fundamentally no different than the last year. The staff has nothing further to add at this juncture, but we certainly glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Sorry, I'll just chime in real quick. I know like a few months ago we talked about, so this would be the 2016 legislative calendar and platform here. A few months ago we talked about, Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton had brought up something about water issues, so would this be the appropriate time to put that in, or would there be a time that would come back to us?
I believe this would be the time where you'd want to insert something of that nature into the platform.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you're still there or not, but I just thought I'd bring that up since we're talking about it now, because that's what we'd suggested at the time.
No, thank you. So I'm very fearful that the state, there's published media reports that even though we have a budget surplus, they're still looking for tax increases. Whether they're highway, whether they're, I don't even want to get into all those places. And what I sent staff was something that has potential that the state of California would tax services, specifically water services. And so I think being in opposition of that would be a very important thing for us. I think we need to get a control on our spending first before we ever consider raising taxes or fees. This might be a fee or a tax. And I think staff has that documentation. I don't have the specific bill, but I think we should take a position that is against those types of fees or taxes included in the item that I forwarded staff.
So just to be clear what you were trying to do there, so basically opposing any potential tax-related bills with respect to water infrastructure, is that right? In the League of California Cities strategic goals for 2016, it's increased funding for critical transportation and water infrastructure. So I'm assuming that you want to make sure that the state continues to do that, but not through some tax or bond or something. I just want to make sure I understand what you're, and that might be able to help the staff more clearly understand exactly what you're looking for. So,
yeah, I think it was services, and I can't remember it exactly. I wish I had the document handy. I don't know if anyone could find it from staff. Sorry, I don't have that. But I think it was services and water was included in that.
Okay. I think since maybe we don't have it tonight.
Is there a way that we could find that information, bring this item back at the next meeting in December?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, if that's the desire of the City Council.
I'll make a motion that we table this to the next council meeting.
I second that.
Okay.
You don't want to table? No, if you don't want to table, tell me.
You got it?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right.
I don't see any harm in it.
Cast your votes, please.
That motion passes unanimously.
Mayor votes on the next item. You need to introduce it first.
Agenda item 10, selection of mayor and mayor pro tem for the ensuing year, submitted by city clerk.
Thank you. Mayor Voigt, given that it's almost 10:30, I move to pick this item up next time, 2 weeks from tonight.
Next time?
Next time.
I'll second that.
Oh, okay.
Can we take a vote?
Is that okay legally, as long as we get done before January?
Yes, the council's policy is that the officer takes effect January 1st, so the December 15th meeting would be.
It won't affect, okay. And, yeah, cast your votes, please.
That motion carries with Councilmember Gardner opposed.
That brings us to the city manager's report.
Nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Gardner.
Because we seem to get mixed up a lot of the times with the minutes and the notes, and I said this and I said that, I decided to start doing my council comments written, so that everybody understood what I was saying and got a chance to transcribe it. And Stephanie and I think it's a good idea, and we'll see. Maybe it craps out and maybe it works well. Anyhow, so first I would like consensus on my first item. And this is dealing with the increase in crime in Lake Forest, which we saw at the last things, up 29%. And I only found out about that kind of like by chance. Wow, crime's up. The first time it was up 37%, now it's up 29%. Holy cow. So I would like every month beginning January 1st, 2016, until otherwise directed by council, staff submit a crime update that will give us the latest statistics for crime rates for Part 1 and Part 2 crimes in Lake Forest, including individual crime categories and summary statistics. These statistics be accompanied by brief discussion of steps being taken to deal with any increases in the crimes. And number 2 in that category. Every quarter, beginning the same date, the staff shall submit a quarterly crime update, which contains the same information as the crime update, with additional information including A, cost savings programs and their effectiveness, B, neighborhood watch statistics, including the number of existing programs, meeting held and attended, and C, star statistics, including the number of people in the program and the nature and number of hours given. Sufficient historical information shall be supplied to now allow analysis of trends. So I'd like to kind of get that on, because what's more important than public safety? It is up, and I think we should take a look at it for the next couple of months while it remains up. So those are my 2 issues. I'd like consensus. Let's start with number 1, just the basic report.
Okay. I know we can't really talk about the item, so we'd have to put it on a future agenda to discuss.
Yeah, if you
maybe you can help me just a little bit. So if I go too far, let me know. But before I would even want to put it on an agenda, just kind of like what we did tonight, we went through an exercise with an issue, and people were frustrated that we even put it on the agenda. And actually, Councilman Nick asked me at the break, how do we make sure we don't do dumb stuff like this? That's a paraphrase. It's not exactly the quote, but so. Before we go down that route, is there a way that I could have a general idea of what something like this might cost or time that it might entail, or am I going too far? So that's a question for the city attorney.
Mr. Mayor, Council, it is not going too far to request staff to give a general ballpark estimate of time involved in bringing something back.
Okay.
I'm going to make the assumption that's a question of the staff at this juncture.
Yes, sorry.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that, I would defer to, I think, Chief Valentine relative to this issue, in as much as it would be he and his staff who fundamentally would be spending the time to do this. And so I don't know if you're able to give a good sort of ballpark of that at this juncture, knowing that you haven't had the time to really think through it. But could you give some assessment of what you might think that could take to do?
Mayor and council members, the issue is not necessarily the amount of time. The data is compiled on a monthly basis and given, and that's why it's on the city's website. It's the delay that is the issue, or my concern, is trying to give a monthly report, say in February for January's numbers. We might not have January's numbers till the end of February. So in that sense, I think a quarterly report is more feasible as trying to compile the data on a quarterly basis. On a monthly basis, those numbers come in too late to try to compile and make any useful determination form in a presentation. But we have the data. We can compile it. As far as a time frame, I can only estimate on that. I just know that it's reasonable to do.
I think he's right. And now that I hear it, that monthly makes no sense. But
okay, well, with the comments that he said that it's easy information to provide, I can support putting that on a future agenda.
I can too. Can we make it quarterly instead of monthly?
That makes much more sense.
I think that
we got a little carried away.
In going back to the comment that I said earlier, I think we run into a problem. We get so detailed and so like, okay, it's got to. Oop, my time's up.
You're running. It's my time.
Continue on.
I guess I
continue on.
Okay. We should.
It just.
We already put it on the agenda. We probably should wait until you're. Sorry.
Yeah, it feels like to me that this is so specific, and it's just. I think our policy. We should be policy and not so detailed, because when we get so detailed, then we come up with what happened tonight, where there's. We've chosen the sites, and staff hasn't had really a time to look at them prior to that, and that gives angst. I really think that we should say we would like staff to report crime statistics, and then them figure out how to do it.
I think we need to do that when the item's on the agenda. So he's got consensus. We can't really go into the details of that till it's on the agenda. So.
Okay. Consensus number 2 I'd like is that the council authorizes quarterly Pet Days to be held at Baker Ranch Park. The Pet Days will be held on a weekend day and will allow rescue. You're going to be so uncomfortable. Now, here's a man who wants to hold somebody else accountable, and now he's worried about my details. Anyhow, will be held on a weekend day and will allow rescue groups and service providers, pet stores, pet groomers, dog trainers, to display their wares. Pet Days will begin at 9 a.m. through 2 p.m. Program will be administered through community services and advertised through the city website, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to have Pet Days as a quarterly event, and, you know, if you want to say half semi-annually, that would be okay, too. We used to have Pet Days here in the city, and for some reason we stopped, and they were very well attended, and people really enjoyed them. Now that we have a dog park, it makes sense. So,
would you change your consensus item to allow to recommend that staff come back with a proposal? So that, I mean, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. What if that doesn't work?
Sure, no problem.
I mean, there's just so many. Again, it's just.
Sure, I have no problem with that.
Councilman Gardner, that Pet Day used to be held at Pittsford Park,
Right.
And I don't know if the dog park actually has the capacity for that at the dog park. And so that's
Point of order here. I think Councilman Gardner trying to put something on the agenda, either as consensus or not. We shouldn't get into the details.
Yeah, and I'm happy to
of the
just say
items,
Pet Day
so-
and bring it back.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes up, we can discuss it ad nauseum if we want, so.
I'll support Pet Day, but not the location. So I'm not going by written script here.
Yeah, and again, this is the trial that I can see. The next
Okay,
time,
so-
we'll do it better. Also, Community Services tells me that they can't purchase an outdoor bulletin board.
We'll discuss that at
With that?
on the calendar, because I'm only giving consensus to bring it back to talk about Pet Day.
Okay, number 3, Tom Cagley wanted to do a presentation from the OC Grand Jury at the next meeting, and he asked me to bring that up to get consensus that he could do that.
Seeing none, move on to the next one.
Okay, nobody want to give consensus to Tom Cagley's grand jury presentation?
Seeing
It's like to educate people.
What's the next one?
Okay, next one is, as it's 6 months since the last performance review, the council authorized a closed session at the next meeting for the purposes of reviewing the city manager's performance. Perform 6-month performance review. It's unusual for the city to do, but I think in light of the Saddleback Ranch Road thing and many other issues I don't want to get into tonight, I don't think it's inappropriate to do.
Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item.
Mayor and Council, if I might interject, on the second item that Councilmember Gardner requested consensus on, I know that Mayor Voigt, you provided it.
That was-
Was there a second? Was there a third person? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
And again, that, mind you, that was just bringing Dog Day back.
Correct.
Okay.
So there is consensus
Discussion, yeah.
from Mayor Voigt, Mayor
Discussion
Pro
of
Tem
Dog Day. Okay.
Hamilton, and Councilmember Gardner. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a general discussion. I don't think having a long staff report, just a paragraph.
That's bringing us to Councilman Adam Nick.
Saying, right?
Anything further?
I'll be brief, hopefully less than a minute. First, I want to thank everybody who was here, who is still here, in particular, all of you who showed up tonight and talked some sense into us. That aside, I would be remiss if I did not say that I am rendering a very sincere apology. I'm doing it actively and proactively, and then someone comes and admonishes me. Now, I do realize this gentleman has been after me for years on social media for reasons unknown to me, but we all make mistakes. I characterized an event by using the wrong term, by using the term in a different context than it is usually known. There I am talking to this fellow. It's not an excuse, but there I am talking to this fellow reporter, negotiating my way in traffic downtown Los Angeles, talking to the reporter, I'm multitasking, and I said the wrong thing, and then I apologize for it, and yet this needs to stop. I mean, the fact that we try to take things out of context, or even when they are in context, we try to exploit one another. This is not America. This is surely not what I imagined when I was a kid, and this is not what I have lived. We are better than this. We are better than being a political hack, coming to the podium about the second gentleman, saying things that are further untrue. This is just disingenuous, and I can use other adjectives describing it. I choose not to. I wish you all a great evening and the best in life. And my thanks to all of you for having been my greater family for 30-some odd years, since I was a teenager when I came to what was then El Toro, and it pretty much stopped on Lake Forest Drive at Tribuco Road. Thank you. Good night.
Brings us Councilman Robinson.
So I'm going to use a line I've used a few times tonight. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just have to point out some facts and have to provide some commentary here. Again, Councilman Nick, based on your comments. I definitely appreciate the apology. No question about it. You have to understand, and there could be some politics that occurs. We all know that it does. There's no question about that, right? And it frustrates me to no end, because we really should be focused on what's best for the community, all five of us. We're not going to always agree on what is the best thing to do, but if we're all focused on what we believe is the best thing to do, we can engage in substantive debate. The one thing, and I've told you this personally, but I'm just going to say it publicly, the one thing that you have to understand is that each one of us has a certain title. I'm still just Dwight. At home, I'm just Dad. Sometimes, I don't look at myself as being a council member, as being anything significant other than I get the chance to represent the people of Lake Forest. But when I speak, I'm not just an average Joe. I'm not just an average Dwight. And we have to be very cognizant of the comments that we make and the words that we use. Those are really important, and we have to understand that when we use language that is inappropriate in whatever fashion, that there are going to be people in the community who are going to be incredibly frustrated with us, and an apology won't be enough. There might be nothing that you could do that would be enough, because in some cases a scar could have just been ripped open. The politics aside, forget all of that. We have to understand that, and we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. That's incredibly important, and I challenge myself, I challenge all of us to do that. When we make public statements, though, like that, we have to understand that I'll use the word simple, and I'm not trying to diminish it, but a simple apology isn't enough for a lot of people. They need to see more. And we need to prove ourselves by our actions. We need to be focused on doing what's best for the community. We need to cut out all the selfish garbage and all the political garbage that has been going on in this city for the last, definitely for months, probably longer, but I'll just say the last 6 to 8 months have been incredibly challenging. And I want to let you know, I respect each one of your opinions when they're sincere. I don't care whether you're sitting to my left or my right. I appreciate your positions when you're sincere. When it's political maneuvering, I don't care if you're my closest ally or not on this council. I have no respect for that. Not one bit. And so, I just want to leave us with that one part, because you brought it up. I would have just left it alone, but our words mean something. We're representing the people of Lake Forest. Let's all shape up and make sure that we're doing what we believe is in the best interest of the community. Again, we can have completely opposite opinions about what that means, but if it's coming from the heart and that's what you truly believe, then we'll be able to accomplish something. We'll be able to have some good debate. Once you get all the rest of the garbage in, lines get drawn. I don't want to do this because of that. I don't want to do that because of that person's saying it. And that's not any way to run a community. We have a great city here. We have a fantastic city. It's in fabulous shape. Is everything perfect? Nothing's perfect. But we've got an amazing city with amazing amenities. The city's clean. It's well maintained. It's well taken care of. We've got great parks. We've got great, amenities at each one of those parks. We've got great residents. So let's just focus on that and cut out all the garbage.
Scott, if I could beg of you, just 10 seconds.
I'm moving on.
I just want to just 10 seconds, if you would. I just want to quickly say that I subscribe to everything my good friend Dwight said. I respect him. He is someone I learned from to this day, and it will continue. And I echo everything he just said.
Moving on,
full
Mayor
agreement
Pro
with
Tem
him. Thank you.
Hamilton.
Thank you for letting me speak, Scott.
We really do have a great community. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. That's really why I ran, was to serve, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm going to continue to enjoy it. I just wanted to mention, too, that I also went to the dog park grand opening between now and the last, I think it was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It was an excellent event. Everything looks really good. I'm really happy. Took my dog, who was a rescue dog that we adopted, and just really had a great time. I think it's overdue that Lake Forest has its first dog park, and I'm just excited to be here when it occurred. With that, I wish everybody a great evening.
I, too, was at the opening of the Barker Dog Park, and what a great day. We took my dog to his second dog park. It's not quite as big as the Mission Viejo one, but it was adequate. There must have been 15 big dogs running around and just going crazy in the big dog section. I saw a little dog squirt out of the little dogs section and got out, and it was quite the thing of seeing this little thing running around. But they caught it and put it back through the fence and put it back in to the small dog thing. But it was a great part of the community. It's one of our great new amenities for the city of Lake Forest, along with our new sports park. Our financial stability in this city, we've got a lot of money in cash reserves, and I want to say that that new position of vector control was eye-opening in what they do for the county, and it was a real heartfelt plea to all of you to keep your eye open for that little black and white mosquito. And as we head into this El Nino season, where we are going to get dumped on with more rain, go around your yard and make sure that you don't have any buckets turned upright. Flip them over, and things even in the bushes, because I was learning, even the top of a cap can turn into a breeding facility for mosquitoes, and we don't want this mosquito to be getting around and populating the area of Lake Forest. It's carrying four new diseases, and I think that it's really something that Vector Controls feels that we can get a handle on, but they're concerned and they need the help of the citizens. And so maybe take an extra flyer, give it out to your neighbors, because that breeding location may be in your neighbor's yard. So just make that aware to them, not to have anything left over for the rains to accumulate in. I, too, feel that all of the council members up here, whether it be Councilman Adam Nick or Councilman Jim Gardner, Mayor Pro Tem Andrew Hamilton, Councilman, they've all earned the title of honorable in my eye. And all of them are worthy to be my friends, I think that we've got to work together for the good of the people, and I think that seeking common ground and not being so negative upon each other, I think would help in going a long ways. And so it bothers me when people tell me what they've read in different blogs and that there's people out there criticizing us, and then everybody wants to come here and they want us to be happy and go lucky. I think that the discontentment and the sowing of that kind of seed is not healthy for the city. We've got a great city. We've got great people in our city, and we are a healthy city, one of the healthiest in the County of Orange. And so I want to thank the staff for a great report on possible dog locations tonight, and I appreciate you guys so much, and I want to wish everybody out there, including my city councilman, a happy holiday season, and until we see each other again, may you be safe and sound. Thank you so much. I close this meeting.